I never imagined that one quiet evening would change everything. I thought I knew about my world. This is my story, the story of the night I was summoned to the private chamber of someone I had only seen from a distance. Someone powerful, mysterious, someone I could never have expected would know me at all. What happened that night was unlike anything I've ever experienced. Strange, tense, and strangely intimate all at once. I'm not here to tell a fairy tale, this is real my experience in my own words. It's a story of hidden feeling and careful secrets, of tension that grows in ways you don't notice until it's already pulling you in. There's an undercurrent of danger but also curiosity, a sense that I was stepping into something far bigger than myself. It's the kind of night that changed the way you see everything, and it started the moment her presence filled the room. From the first step I took toward her chamber, I knew nothing would feel ordinary again. There was a quiet, almost magnetic pull that I couldn't resist, and I entered. The air itself seemed to hold its breath. I didn't know what I would find or what she would discover, but whatever it was going to mark me forever. And that night, as the door closed behind me, I realized I was already part of something I could never step away from.
Rain crawled down the stained glass saints like tears that had forgotten how to fall. It should have been impossible for the palace to sound alive. Stone didn't breathe, iron didn't sigh, but as Rowan Vale stood in the vast interior hall of Vesperhold, he heard the building exhale around him. Crimson candles guttered in niches high above, their light thick as blood and sweet as incense. Moonbeams, pale and cold, spilled through towering windows and broke apart on the marble floor like shattered bones. And at the far end, on a raised dais carved with bats and roses, sat Queen Seraphine of the Night Court. She looked less like a woman than like a verdict, long dark hair flowing over her shoulders like shadow poured from a goblet, a gown of black and deep red clasped with silver embroidery that caught the light the way a blade caught a throat. Her crimson eyes were not wild. They were calm, knowing. The kind of calm that came when a hunter already felt the warm pulse of prey in her mouth. Rowan forced himself to walk forward. Every step rang too loud. Every step was a confession. He had survived border wars, plague camps, and the burning of his family's village. He had marched through the hungry forests where wolves learned to speak with human teeth. He had carried messages under arrow fire. He had killed men who begged, and he had spared men who did not deserve it. But nothing in his life had prepared him for the way a single glance from Seraphine made his secrets feel like skin you could peel. The guards that flanked the hall were statues in black armor, vampires older than the nation he'd been born into, yet none of them moved to stop him. They didn't need to. The queen's attention pinned him better than shackles. He stopped at the foot of the dais. The air here was warmer, perfumed with roses that had no business blooming in winter. His hands clenched at his sides, the knuckles sore with restraint. Seraphine leaned forward slightly, as if he were a book she had already read but wanted to savor again. "Rowan Vale," she said, and his name sounded like a slow kiss against glass. "You've worn your courage like worn armor. Noble, battered, and remarkably loud." He didn't answer. His tongue felt too heavy, his mouth too dry. Her smile did not brighten, it sharpened. "You know why you were summoned?" He swallowed. "No, your majesty." The title came out right. The lie did not. Seraphine's gaze drifted over him, dark travel clothes damp with rain, a sword at his hip he would never draw in this room, a silver charm half hidden beneath his collar that burned against his skin like guilt. "Do you know," she murmured, "how many secrets echo in this palace every night?" Rowan's pulse betrayed him, hammering in his throat. "Some secrets are mere amusements." She lifted one pale hand, turning it as if inspecting the bones beneath the skin. A duke's stolen coin. A priest's appetite. A noblewoman's prayers spoken to a man who is not her husband. Her eyes returned to him and the hall seemed to tilt. "And then," she said softly, "there are secrets that taste like devotion." Rowan's breath snagged. Seraphine rose. The candles flared as if in response. She descended the steps with unhurried grace, the hem of her gown whispering over stone. When she stopped before him, she was close enough that he could see the faint sheen on her lips, the delicate webbing of veins at her temples, the tiny tilt of her head that was almost curious. "Tell me," she said, "does it hurt?" Rowan stared at her, not understanding. Or understanding too well. Seraphine's fingers, cool as river stones, caught his chin and turned his face slightly toward the stained glass. Moonlight painted him in pallid blues. Loving someone you're not allowed to touch, she continued, voice velvet over steel. Loving them so fiercely it becomes a second heartbeat. Loving them so loudly that even the dead can hear. Rowan's chest tightened as if a hand had closed around his ribs. He should have denied it. He should have lied as he had lied to survive. But something in her gaze made lying feel like stepping into a grave while still breathing. "Who told you?" he whispered and hated himself for asking. Seraphine smiled, almost kindly. "No one," she said. "You did." Her hand slid down, stopping over the place where the silver charm lay hidden. Rowan flinched as her fingers brushed the metal through fabric. The charm burned against his skin like a brand. "This," she said. "A saint's ward. A love token. A promise. The sort humans press to their hearts when they're terrified their hearts will be taken." Rowan's voice came out rough. "It's for protection." Seraphine's eyes glittered. "From me?" He didn't answer. She leaned closer, and the scent of roses and something darker, iron, smoke, night, filled his lungs. "Rowan," she said, using his name again like a claim, "I discovered your secret love." He felt his world narrow to her mouth, to the faint curve of Fong just visible when she spoke, to the unbearable intimacy of her voice in that enormous hall. "And now," she continued, "I've summoned you to my private chamber." Rowan's hands curled into fists so tight his nails cut skin. The word private did not mean safe. It meant hidden. It meant no witnesses. It meant whatever happened could be rewritten as rumor, or erased entirely. He forced himself to meet her gaze. "Why?" Seraphine studied him for a long moment. In the silence, the candles hissed. The rain tapped the windows like impatient fingers. Then she said very softly, "Because I want to see what you will do when the world's rules are removed." A shiver ran through him, not from cold. "And because," she added almost thoughtfully, "your love belongs to someone I cannot allow you to keep." Rowan's stomach dropped. He managed to speak. "Who?" Seraphine's smile returned, dangerously knowing, almost tender. "Come," she said, and extended her hand like an invitation and a sentence at once. "Let's speak where secrets can't pretend they're holy." Rowan looked at her hand. If he took it, he would cross a line that might never be uncrossed. If he refused, he would die. He reached out. Her fingers closed around his. They were colder than he expected, and infinitely steady, as if her grip could anchor the entire night. As the queen turned and led him through velvet-curtained arches into the deeper heart of Vesperhold, Rowan realized something that made his throat tighten with dread and longing. He had been afraid of her power. But he had not yet understood the power she had over him. Not until she looked back, her eyes glowing like embers, and said, "Do not lie to me in my chamber, Rowan Vale. I've already heard the truth in the way you breathe." And the doors behind them shut with the finality of a tomb. The corridor to the queen's private chambers was not merely a passage, it was a slow unmaking. The air changed as they walked. The palace's grand hall had smelled like candle wax and old stone. Here the scent grew intimate, layered with perfume that might have been roses or might have been blood that had learned to pretend. The light dimmed. The ceilings lowered. The sound of the rain faded until it was only a distant hush, like an audience held outside a theater. Rowan followed Seraphine, their hands still joined. He hated the way his body noticed the small details, the softness of her palm against his, the faint pressure of her thumb as if she were counting his pulse, the way her steps made no sound while his boots whispered and scuffed like a guilty man's. He tried to remember the mission that had brought him to Vesperhold. A treaty. A ceasefire. A brittle agreement between the human kingdoms and the Night Court, signed on paper so thick it could soak up lies. Rowan had been sent as courier and witness. Nothing more. Nothing more, except that he had already broken the treaty in the most human way possible. He had loved. And love, in a world divided between mortals and immortals, was always treason. They reached a pair of doors tall enough to swallow a carriage. They were carved in dark wood, inlaid with silver vines that twined into thorns. Seraphine did not knock. She pressed her palm to the center seam. The doors parted soundlessly as if the palace itself obeyed her. Inside, her private chamber waited. Rowan had imagined something colder, crypt-like, sparse, a predator's den. Instead, the room held a strange, suffocating beauty. Heavy velvet curtains draped the walls, swallowing echoes. The bed was massive, draped in black silk that shone like oil. A hearth burned with blue flame, casting a ghostly glow. Candles flickered in clusters, their crimson light painting everything in bruise-colored warmth. And there, on a small table near the fire, sat a decanter of dark liquid and 2 crystal glasses. Prepared. Rowan's throat tightened. Seraphine released his hand and moved further in, her gown trailing behind her like a shadow that refused to detach. "Close the doors," she said. Rowan hesitated. His fingers flexed, wanting his sword, wanting distance, wanting an exit that didn't exist. He turned and pushed the doors shut. They clicked into place with soft, merciless certainty. When he turned back, Seraphine was watching him as if she'd been watching him all his life. "Come closer," she said. Rowan didn't move. Seraphine's eyes narrowed slightly, not with anger but with something like interest. "You think distance will protect you?" "It might," he said. Her smile was almost amused. "From what?" He didn't answer. Because the truth was worse than fear. Distance would not protect him from her. Distance would not protect him from himself. Seraphine walked to the hearth and poured the dark liquid into one glass. The sound was soft, intimate. She didn't offer him the other glass. She lifted her own and sipped. Rowan watched her throat move. The silence thickened between them like fog. Finally, Seraphine said, "Tell me her name." Rowan's heart stuttered. "Who?" Seraphine's gaze did not waver. "The one you love." Rowan's mouth went dry. He had imagined many ways this might go: torture, interrogation, death, but not this. Not the queen herself asking a question with the calmness of someone requesting a poem. "I don't love anyone," he lied. Seraphine's eyes flashed and the room felt colder. "You were warned," she said softly. "Do not lie to me in my chamber." Rowan forced himself to breathe evenly. "I'm not lying." Seraphine set the glass down with deliberate care. Then she crossed the room until she stood before him again. She lifted her hand, not touching him this time, simply hovering near his chest. He could feel the cold radiating from her skin, like winter held in human shape. "I can hear your blood," she whispered. "It becomes music when you lie. A quickening. A panic." Rowan's jaw tightened. Seraphine's voice softened further, becoming almost gentle. "You think you are protecting her by refusing to name her." Rowan's eyes snapped up. "Leave her out of this." Seraphine's expression shifted. Something almost sad flickered across her face, gone in a blink. "So you admit she exists?" Rowan's shoulders slumped slightly. The lie had collapsed like rotten wood. He stared at the floor. The black silk rug beneath his boots looked like spilled ink. Seraphine waited, and the waiting itself was pressure. Rowan's voice came out hoarse. "Her name is Leora." The name felt like exposing a wound to air. Seraphine repeated it quietly. "Leora." Rowan couldn't help himself. "How do you know?" "I know many things," Seraphine cut in, but not harshly. "I know the way your eyes find the same corner of a room whenever you enter. The way your hand hovers at your chest when you think no one sees. The way your voice softens when you speak of the border villages that the Night Court now protects under treaty." Rowan flinched. "That's just." "She is not just anyone," Seraphine said. Rowan's hands clenched again. He could feel the scar tissue on his palms from years of sword training. He could feel the tremor in his fingers that betrayed him. "She's human," he said, as if that should settle everything. She's nothing to you." Seraphine's eyes darkened. "That is where you are wrong." Rowan's head lifted slowly. "What do you mean?" Seraphine walked past him, unhurried, circling as if he were prey she wanted to study before the kill. Her gown brushed his sleeve like a whisper. "I have allowed humans to live," she said, voice calm. "I have allowed them to build their villages under my shadow, to pray to their sun gods in the morning and lock their doors at night. I have allowed them to call me monster and still ask for my protection when the wolves come." She stopped behind him. Rowan's spine stiffened. "But I do not allow," Seraphine continued, "what threatens my throne." Rowan turned sharply. "Leora doesn't threaten." "She does," Seraphine said, meeting his gaze. "Not by power. By what she represents." Rowan's breath caught. "Which is?" Seraphine's lips curved faintly, but there was no humor in it. "Hope," she said. The word landed like a stone in water, sending ripples through Rowan's chest he couldn't control. Seraphine stepped closer again, and now she was within reach, too near. Her eyes held his, steady as a blade. You are my treaty's witness, she said. My proof to the human kings that I can be reasonable. Rowan swallowed. And I have been. You have been useful, she corrected. Then her voice softened, almost intimate. And you have been disobedient. Rowan's pulse thudded. I didn't break any law. Seraphine's gaze slid to his mouth, then back to his eyes. Humans always think laws are written only in ink. She raised her hand and this time touched him, one finger tracing the edge of his collar, finding the silver charm beneath. Rowan's muscles went taut, but he didn't pull away. He couldn't. Her finger pressed lightly and the charm burned hotter. Tell me, Seraphine whispered, what promise does this represent? Rowan's voice cracked. A vow. Seraphine's eyes gleamed. To her? Rowan closed his eyes briefly. Yes. When he opened them, Seraphine was watching him with something unreadable, hunger perhaps, but also something older. She belongs to a village under my protection, Seraphine said. Which means, by night court law, she belongs to my domain. Rowan's blood ran cold. No. Seraphine's tone remained calm. You don't get to deny it. Rowan stepped back. His heel caught the edge of the rug. She's not property. Seraphine's eyes flashed. Neither are you. The words struck him harder than he expected. Seraphine tilted her head. Yet here you stand. In my chamber. At my summons. Rowan's throat tightened. He wanted to shout, to rage, to say he had no choice. But something in him knew that wasn't entirely true. He had come because he was afraid. And because some darker curiosity had pulled him forward. An awful, undeniable fascination with a queen who held his life like a coin. Seraphine turned away and walked to the bed. She sat on its edge, black silk pooling around her like spilled night. Come, she said again, softer now. Sit. Rowan didn't. Seraphine watched him as if waiting for a child to stop pretending he wasn't hungry. Rowan, she said, and his name sounded almost tired. Do you think I summoned you only to threaten you? He stared at her, confusion threading through fear. What else would it be? Seraphine's gaze drifted to the hearth's blue flame, then back to him. Because I am curious. Rowan frowned. Curious about what? Seraphine leaned forward slightly, elbows resting on her knees, hands clasped. The posture was almost human. About love, she said simply. Rowan's breath caught in his throat. She smiled faintly, but this time it was softer, shadowed by something like longing. You humans, she murmured, you build entire lives around something so fragile. You die for it. You betray for it. You forgive for it. Her eyes locked on his. And you would risk my wrath for a girl in a border village. Rowan swallowed hard. She's not just a girl. Seraphine's smile flickered. Of course. Rowan's voice came out sharper. If you're going to kill me, just do it. Seraphine's gaze sharpened. Death is not the only punishment. Rowan's stomach tightened. Seraphine stood again, moving toward him with slow inevitability. You are brave, she said. And you are stupid. A dangerous combination. Rowan held his ground, though every instinct screamed at him to run. Seraphine stopped close enough that her breath, cool, faintly sweet, brushed his cheek. Here is what will happen, she whispered. You will tell me everything. How you met her. What you promised her. What you plan to do. Rowan's voice shook with fury. And if I refuse? Seraphine's eyes glowed brighter. Then I will find her myself. Rowan's body moved before his mind did, his hand darting toward his sword. In a blink, Seraphine's hand was on his wrist, iron-strong, crushing. The sword stayed sheathed. Her face remained calm, but her eyes turned predatory. You will not draw steel in my chamber, she said softly. You will not threaten me with a weapon forged by men who fear the dark. Rowan's wrist throbbed in her grip. He gritted his teeth, pain sharp and humiliating. Seraphine leaned closer, lips near his ear. And you will not pretend, she murmured, that your love is the only hunger here. Rowan froze. Her words slid under his skin like a needle. Seraphine released his wrist. The ache lingered. Rowan stepped back, breathing hard, anger and terror and something else tangling in his chest. Seraphine watched him with a calm that felt like cruelty. Speak, she said. Rowan stared at her, at the queen who could destroy him, at the queen who seemed, impossibly, lonely behind her power. He thought of Leora's laugh, the way she had looked at him like he was more than a sword and scars. He thought of her hands, warm, human, cupping his face when he'd told her he didn't know how to be anything but a weapon. He swallowed, and the words came out, not as surrender but as desperate protection. I met her, he began, when the night court took the border. And as he spoke, the queen listened like someone starving. Rowan's memory of Leora did not begin with romance. It began with smoke. The border village of Briar Hollow had been burning, human torches thrown by human hands in panic, because when the night court's banners first appeared on the ridge, the villagers had believed the stories. They had believed the vampires would come with fangs bared and children screaming. Rowan had arrived with a detachment of human soldiers sent to negotiate and observe, which were gentler words for, make sure the night court doesn't slaughter everyone. He remembered the cold, the way the wind cut through wool and chainmail alike, the way the villagers' fear made them smell sour and sharp. And then the night court had come. Not as a horde but as a procession, silent riders in black, their horses' breath steaming in the moonlight, their armor etched with silver that caught every flicker of flame. At their head rode a man with eyes like polished obsidian and a voice like a priest's hymn. Lord Malrek, Seraphine's emissary. He had dismounted, surveyed the burning village and said calmly, "Put out your fires. You'll waste your own homes before you ever touch mine." The villagers had stared, stunned by the bluntness. Rowan had watched, tense, hand on his sword, waiting for the massacre. It never came. Instead, Malrek had spoken of terms. Protection. Tribute. Boundaries. Laws. A bargain. And as the villagers hesitated, caught between terror and survival, a woman had stepped forward. Leora. Rowan's throat tightened as he spoke her name again, here in the queen's chamber, under the pressure of Seraphine's gaze. She was brave, he said, and heard the softness in his own voice. Not in the way soldiers are brave. Not loud. Not stupid. Just steady. Seraphine watched him, her expression unreadable. Rowan continued, the memory pulling him deeper. She asked Malrek what the tribute would be, what the cost was. And she didn't flinch when he looked at her like he could see through her bones. Seraphine's lips curved faintly. She sounds wise. She was, Rowan said. He remembered how Leora had stood with soot on her cheek, hair braided back, hands clenched but not shaking. If we agree, she had asked Malrek, what do you take from us? Malrek's smile had been thin. Only what you can spare. And if we refuse? Malrek's gaze had drifted over the village, over the burning roofs, the terrified children, the starving dogs. Then you will remain unprotected. And the things in the woods will eat you before winter ends. It had been a threat but also a truth. Rowan remembered the villagers' silence then, the way fear had shifted into grim calculation. Leora had glanced at Rowan, at the human soldier who was supposed to protect them, and her look had said, without words, will you? Rowan had felt something twist in his gut. He had been a courier, a witness, a blade for kings who didn't know Briar Hollow existed. He could not promise protection. But he had still stepped forward and said, I'll stay until the treaty is signed. It was a small thing, meaningless in the grand game of courts. But Leora's eyes had softened. That night, as the villagers argued and the fires died down, Rowan had found her alone at the well, drawing water with hands red from cold. Why did you speak? He had asked. Leora had shrugged, breath steaming. Because no one else would. You could have gotten yourself killed. She had looked at him then, really looked, and Rowan had felt seen in a way that unsettled him. People like you, she'd said, you're always waiting for someone to give you permission to be good. Rowan had stared at her, stunned. She'd smiled faintly, not unkind. So I gave it. In Seraphine's chamber, Rowan's voice faltered. The memory felt too tender to expose. Seraphine's eyes gleamed. And then? Rowan swallowed. Then the treaty was signed. Malrek left guards, night court guards, on the ridge. The wolves stopped coming. The bandits vanished. People started sleeping with their doors unlocked again. Seraphine's gaze sharpened. And you stayed. Rowan nodded. He had told himself it was duty. That the kings had ordered him to remain, to ensure the night court kept its promises. But the truth had been simpler and more dangerous. He stayed because Leora's presence made the world feel less like war. Rowan continued, voice rough. She would bring bread to the soldiers. Not just ours, night court too. She spoke to them like they were men, not monsters. Seraphine's expression flickered at the word monsters. Rowan didn't miss it. She asked me once, Rowan said quietly, if I thought vampires could love. Seraphine's eyes narrowed as if the question struck something deep. Rowan remembered the moment, the two of them sitting on the stone wall outside the village, moonlight silvering everything, the night court guards watching from a distance like silent statues. Rowan had laughed then, uneasy. Why would you ask that? Leora had stared out at the dark forest. Because I think monsters are made, not born. And if they're made, maybe they can unmake themselves. Rowan had looked at her, heart pounding. Do you want them to? She had turned toward him, eyes bright. I want them to be more than their hunger. Rowan's voice cracked. And you made me want that too. Seraphine's gaze held him, and for the first time Rowan saw something like pain in her eyes, brief, sharp, quickly hidden. Rowan forced himself onward, because stopping would mean facing what he didn't want to face. We didn't, he began, then stopped. Seraphine's lips curved. Didn't what? Rowan's cheeks burned. We didn't do anything. Not at first. Seraphine's eyes gleamed. But you wanted to. Rowan's jaw clenched. Yes. He remembered how it had started. Small things. Shared glances. Hands brushing when she passed him a cup. Leora's laugh when he tried clumsily to tell a joke. The way she bandaged his hand once after he cut it, sharpening his blade, her fingers warm against his skin, her brow furrowed with concern that felt too intimate. And then the night she had found him in the church. Old stones, broken saints, a place the villagers rarely used because faith felt flimsy in winter. Rowan had been sitting alone, head bowed, the silver charm in his hands. Leora had slipped into the pew beside him. You pray? She'd asked. Rowan had shaken his head. Not anymore. Then why are you here? Rowan's throat had tightened. Because it's quiet. Leora had looked at the charm. That's not a prayer token. Rowan had stared at it. It was my mother's. Why hold it like that then? He hadn't answered. He hadn't known how to say, because I'm terrified of losing you, and I don't know what to do with that fear. Leora had gently taken the charm from his hands and placed it against his chest, over his heart. Wear it, she'd said. Not as a ward. As a reminder. Of what? That you're allowed to survive, she whispered. Not just fight. Rowan's voice shook as he recounted it. That was the first time I kissed her. Seraphine's eyes glinted. Where? Rowan's throat worked. In the church. Under broken saints. Seraphine's smile was slow and unreadable. How poetic. Rowan's gaze snapped up. Don't mock it. Seraphine's expression hardened slightly. I'm not mocking. I am taking note. Rowan's stomach twisted. Why does any of this matter to you? Seraphine's eyes held his. Because, she said softly, the girl you love is not merely a village healer. Rowan froze. Seraphine took a step closer. The candlelight caught her features, making her look carved from midnight and bone. Leora, Seraphine repeated, savoring it. Do you know what that name means in the old tongue? Rowan's breath caught. No. Seraphine's lips parted, and for a moment her fangs gleamed. It means, she whispered, light. Rowan's stomach dropped. Seraphine's gaze sharpened. And light does not appear in my domain without consequence. Rowan's voice came out raw. What are you saying? Seraphine's eyes burned. I am saying, your secret love is closer to my throne than you understand. Rowan's hands clenched again. Stop speaking in riddles. Seraphine's expression shifted, a flash of something almost cruel. Very well, she said. No riddles. She stepped back, moving toward the table with the decanter. She poured another glass and this time held it out to him. Rowan hesitated. Seraphine's eyes narrowed. Drink. Rowan's jaw tightened. I don't trust you. Seraphine's smile was thin. You don't have to. Rowan stared at the glass. The liquid was darker than wine, thick, almost black. He looked up. What is it? Seraphine's gaze did not soften. Truth. Rowan's pulse thundered. He could refuse. He could cling to whatever scraps of control he had left. But he thought of Leora, of her steadiness, her faith in his better self. Rowan took the glass. The liquid smelled like roses and iron. He drank. It was warm. Too warm. The taste spread through him like fire, and suddenly the room tilted. The candles blurred into streaks. His heartbeat roared in his ears. Seraphine's voice came from far away, and yet right inside his skull. Now, she murmured, tell me what you have not told anyone. Rowan tried to speak, but the words rose on their own, unstoppable. I promised her, he said, and his voice sounded like someone else's, that I would take her away. Seraphine's eyes widened slightly, interest, surprise, something sharp. Rowan's body trembled. I promised her I'd leave the kings. Leave the treaty. Leave everything. I promised I'd run. Seraphine's smile returned, slow and dangerous. And did you intend to keep that promise? Rowan's lips moved without his permission. Yes, he whispered. Yes. The confession hung in the air like a blade. Seraphine leaned forward, eyes glowing brighter. And when, she asked softly, were you going to steal her from my domain? Rowan's throat tightened, but the truth spilled anyway. Tomorrow, he said. Seraphine's gaze went utterly still. The air in the room felt suddenly thinner, as if the palace itself had paused to listen. Seraphine set her own glass down with slow precision. Tomorrow, she repeated. Rowan's stomach twisted. He tried to fight the truth, but the drink had loosened his soul like a knot undone. Seraphine's voice went quiet, almost tender. Then you have forced my hand, she said. Rowan's eyes widened, horror blooming. Don't. Seraphine lifted her hand and Rowan's voice died in his throat. Her gaze was calm again. Too calm. You will not run, she said. Not with her. Rowan stumbled backward, breath ragged. You can't. Seraphine's eyes flashed. I can. Rowan's vision swam. The truth wine burned through him, making him dizzy, vulnerable. Seraphine stepped closer and touched his cheek with the back of her fingers. The touch was cold. Almost gentle. I did not summon you here to kill you, she murmured. I summoned you here to make you choose. Rowan's voice shook. Choose what? Seraphine's smile was razor-thin. Love, she whispered, or survival. Rowan's heart lurched. Because he realized in that moment that the queen wasn't only threatening him. She was offering him something. And he didn't yet know which was more terrifying. Rowan did not sleep that night. He sat in a chair near the hearth, staring at the blue flame as if it could burn away the truth he'd spilled. The truth wine's heat still coursed through his veins in waves, sometimes making him feel hollow, sometimes making him feel too full, like grief had become a physical thing lodged behind his ribs. Seraphine did not order him to bed. She did not chain him. She did not call guards to drag him away. Instead, she watched him for a long time, then moved to the far side of the room and sat at her vanity, brushing her hair with slow, almost ritual patience. The intimacy of it unnerved him more than threats, because it made her feel real. Not a monster in a story. Not a queen carved from fear. A woman, immortal, dangerous, yes, but still shaped by her own habits, her own loneliness. Rowan's hands were still trembling when he finally spoke. What do you mean? He asked, voice hoarse. You want me to choose? Seraphine's brush paused. In the mirror, her crimson eyes met his. I mean, she said softly, that your love is not free. Rowan's jaw clenched. Love isn't supposed to be bought. Seraphine's smile flickered in the mirror. You humans cling to what love is supposed to be as if the world cares about your ideals. Rowan swallowed. So what's your price? Seraphine set the brush down and turned slowly, facing him fully. My price, she said, is honesty. Rowan laughed bitterly. You already took that from me. Seraphine's gaze sharpened. No. The wine loosened your tongue. It did not loosen your heart. Rowan's throat tightened. He wanted to deny that, but he couldn't. Seraphine stood and crossed the room with quiet grace, stopping near the hearth. The blue flames painted her skin in ghost light. I know what you intend, she said. You intend to steal Leora away. To run beyond my borders. Perhaps to the southern kingdoms where the sun is stronger and the priests carry silver. Perhaps you think that distance will protect you. Rowan's voice was low. It would protect her. Seraphine's eyes narrowed. Would it? Or would it simply trade one cage for another? Rowan flinched. Seraphine leaned closer, her gaze unwavering. Tell me, Rowan, what would you do if the kings ordered you to return? If they threatened your family's lands? If they called you traitor and sent men after you? Rowan's hands clenched. I'd fight. Seraphine's lips curved. And if they threatened her? Rowan froze. Seraphine's voice softened to a whisper. If they said, Give her to us and you may live. Would you still fight? Rowan's mouth opened but no sound came. Because he couldn't answer without lying and he couldn't lie to himself anymore. Seraphine's eyes held something like pity. That is what I mean when I say love is not free. Love is leverage. Love is a blade someone else can hold to your throat. Rowan's voice cracked. So you'll use it? Seraphine's expression hardened. Yes. Rowan's breath shuddered. Anger surged hot and desperate. Then you're no better than the kings. Seraphine's eyes flashed. In a blink she was closer, so fast Rowan barely registered movement. Her hand caught his chin again, forcing him to look at her. Do not compare me to men, she hissed softly. Men break what they fear. I preserve what I choose. Rowan's pulse hammered. Seraphine released him, and her calm returned like a mask sliding back into place. I could kill you, she said. I could have killed you in the hall. I could have killed you in this chamber the moment you confessed. Yet here you are. Rowan's voice came out raw. Why? Seraphine stared into the fire as if watching something there that Rowan couldn't see. Because, she said quietly, I remember what it is to want someone more than your own safety. Rowan's chest tightened. He didn't believe her. He couldn't afford to. But the way she said it, flat, almost weary, did not sound like a lie. Rowan swallowed. Who did you want? Seraphine's gaze snapped to him, and for a moment the air turned sharp. That is not your question to ask, she said. Rowan held her gaze anyway. Then it matters. Seraphine's lips parted slightly. Her fangs gleamed. Rowan waited, expecting her to lash out. Instead she exhaled, slow, controlled. Once, she said, there was a human man in this palace who looked at me as if I were not a monster. Rowan's stomach twisted. Seraphine's voice was distant now, as if she spoke of someone long dead. He was a poet. He wrote songs about sunrise. He called me Seraphine, not Queen. Rowan's throat tightened. What happened to him? Seraphine's eyes darkened. He died. Rowan's breath caught. Seraphine's gaze returned to him, sharp as broken glass. Because he believed love could conquer hunger. He believed he could tame me. Rowan swallowed. And could he? Seraphine's smile was thin, bitter. No. Silence stretched. Rowan's voice came out carefully. Did you kill him? Seraphine's eyes did not flinch. Yes. Rowan's blood ran cold. Seraphine watched his reaction with a calm that felt like self-punishment. I did it, she said softly, because I could not bear the way he looked at me. Like I was something that could be saved. Rowan stared at her, horror and pity tangling in his chest. Seraphine's voice dropped lower. Love is dangerous when you are immortal. It becomes a weakness that lasts centuries. Rowan's hands trembled. So you kill what you love. Seraphine's gaze sharpened. I kill what threatens my control. Rowan's voice cracked with anger. That's the same thing. Seraphine did not deny it. Instead, she stepped closer again, and Rowan felt the heat of the hearth and the cold of her body collide between them. You want to run with Leora? Seraphine said. You want to believe your love will make you free. Rowan's jaw clenched. It will. Seraphine's eyes gleamed. Then prove it. Rowan frowned. How? Seraphine's lips curved. Swear fealty to me. Rowan froze. What? Seraphine's voice remained calm. Swear yourself to the Night Court. Become mine, officially, publicly. My knight. My agent. My blade. Rowan's stomach churned. You want me as your servant. Seraphine's gaze was steady. I want you as your truth. Rowan's hands clenched so hard his nails bit skin. Seraphine continued, voice soft but iron. If you swear fealty, the human kings will have no claim over you. They will call you traitor, yes, but they will not be able to touch you within my borders. And Leora, if she remains here, will be protected by my law. Rowan stared at her, heart pounding. Sounded too neat. Too generous. What's the catch? He whispered. Seraphine's smile deepened, dark and knowing. The catch, she said, is that you will not take her away. Rowan's breath shuddered. So I'd be trapped. Seraphine's eyes gleamed. No. You would be anchored. Rowan shook his head. You'd use her to control me. Seraphine's gaze sharpened. And you would use her to control yourself. Rowan's throat tightened. I don't understand. Seraphine stepped closer until there was barely space between them. The candles made her eyes look like embers. The blue fire made her skin look like marble. You are a man who has lived by orders, she murmured. You have always needed someone else's war to justify your violence. Someone else's cause to make you feel righteous. Rowan's jaw clenched. The words hit too close. Seraphine's voice softened further, almost intimate. But when you love, you become dangerous in a different way. You stop thinking about the world. You think only about the person. Rowan swallowed hard. And that, Seraphine whispered, is when men commit the worst crimes. Rowan's breath caught. I would never hurt her. Seraphine's eyes flashed. Not intentionally. Rowan stared at her, shaken. Seraphine leaned closer, her lips near his ear again. Swear fealty. Stay. And you will have the right to love her openly, under my protection. Rowan's pulse thundered. Or, Seraphine continued, voice like velvet over a knife, refuse. Try to run. And I will hunt you. I will hunt her. And I will not be gentle. Rowan's stomach twisted. His mind raced. Every path led through her. He thought of Leora's hands, her steady gaze, her belief in him. He thought of Seraphine's story, a poet dead because he had believed she could be saved. Rowan's voice came out shaking. Why are you offering this? Seraphine's gaze held his, and for a heartbeat the mask slipped. Because, she whispered, I want to see if love can survive without illusions. Rowan's throat tightened. And because, she added, her voice softer still, I want to see if you will choose her, even if it costs you yourself. Rowan stared at her, trapped between fury and despair and something he didn't want to name. He didn't answer. But Seraphine didn't need his answer yet. She turned away, returning to the hearth as if the conversation had been merely a game of chess. Think, she said. Dawn is near. Rowan laughed bitterly. Dawn doesn't reach this place. Seraphine's smile was faint, almost sad. No, it doesn't. And as the blue fire flickered, Rowan realized the truth. The queen was not simply threatening his love. She was testing it. When the palace finally quieted, when even the candles seemed to burn more softly, Seraphine left him. Not with guards. Not with threats. She simply said, do not wander, and vanished through a side door like smoke slipping through a crack. Rowan remained where he was for a long time, staring at the place she'd disappeared, listening to his own heartbeat. He thought he would feel relief at being alone. Instead, loneliness pressed down on him, thick and suffocating. He stood slowly, joints stiff, and moved toward the window. Outside, the night stretched endless over Vesperhold's grounds, black gardens, dead fountains, trees twisted into skeletal art. Far in the distance, the forest loomed like a mouth. Rowan pressed his forehead to the cold glass and tried to think. Fealty to the night court. It was madness. It was treason. It was surrender. And yet, Seraphine's offer was the only path that didn't end with Leora hunted down like an animal. Rowan's hands shook as he unclasped the silver charm from beneath his collar. The metal was warm from his skin. His mother had pressed it into his palm the night before the village burned. Her hands had been rough, nails broken, face smeared with ash. Keep this, she'd said. Not because it will save you. Because it will remind you you're worth saving. Rowan hadn't believed her then. He barely believed it now. But Leora had touched that same charm against his chest and told him he was allowed to survive. Allowed. As if survival were something you could grant, not just steal. Rowan's throat tightened. He turned away from the window and paced the chamber, restless as a caged thing. In the corner near the bed, a wardrobe stood slightly ajar. The blackwood was carved with roses. Rowan told himself not to touch anything. Not to snoop. Not to invite further punishment. But the truth wine still made his skin feel too thin, his thoughts too loud. He approached the wardrobe. Inside hung garments, gowns and cloaks, all dark, all elegant, all smelling faintly of roses and old stone. And beneath them, tucked on a lower shelf, was a small box. Rowan hesitated. Then he reached in and pulled it out. The box was carved of bone and silver. There was no lock. He lifted the lid. Inside lay letters. Human letters, written in ink that had faded with time. Rowan's breath caught. He picked one up carefully. The paper was brittle, the handwriting elegant. Seraphine's name appeared in the first line. Seraphine, not Queen. Rowan's chest tightened. These were the poet's letters. He shouldn't read them. He knew he shouldn't. But the temptation was a hook. He unfolded the letter. Seraphine, it began. You do not need to fear my love. I do not ask you to be something you are not. I ask only that you let me stand beside you in the dark, and that you let me see the parts of you hide even from yourself. Rowan's throat tightened. He read another. They call you monster, but I have watched you feed the starving wolves so they will not come to the village. I have seen you spare prisoners who spat at your feet. Your hunger is not your whole soul. Rowan's hand trembled. He read a third. If you kill me, it will not be because you are cruel. It will be because you are afraid of believing you deserve tenderness. And if that is true, then my death will be the most tragic poem you ever write. Rowan's breath hitched. He heard, suddenly, a sound behind him. A soft click. He froze, letter in hand. Slowly he turned. Seraphine stood in the doorway watching him. Her face was unreadable. Rowan's stomach dropped. Seraphine's gaze flicked to the letter. Her eyes darkened slightly. You disobeyed, she said softly. Rowan swallowed, throat dry. I didn't mean to. Seraphine crossed the room with slow, measured steps. Rowan's pulse hammered. He expected her to strike him, to rip the letter away, to punish him for invading her past. Instead, she stopped before him and reached out. Rowan flinched instinctively. But she didn't touch him. She took the letter from his trembling hand with a gentleness that startled him. Her fingers brushed his skin in passing, cold, brief. Seraphine looked down at the page. For a long moment she didn't speak. Then she said, voice quiet, he wrote as if words could heal. Rowan swallowed. Did they? Seraphine's lips curved faintly, bitter. No. Rowan's chest tightened. Why keep them? Seraphine's gaze lifted to his, and for a heartbeat her eyes looked old, centuries old, tired in a way Rowan had never seen in a human face. Because, she said softly, they remind me what I destroyed. Rowan's breath caught. Seraphine folded the letter carefully and placed it back in the box. She closed the lid. Then she looked at Rowan again, her gaze sharpening. And now, she said, you know I have loved. Rowan's voice came out rough. You loved him. Seraphine's expression hardened. I wanted him. Rowan shook his head. That's not the same. Seraphine's eyes flashed. In a blur she was closer, so close Rowan could feel the cold radiating from her skin. Do not tell me what my feelings were, she hissed softly. Rowan held her gaze, heart pounding. Then tell me. Seraphine stared at him for a long moment. The silence was heavy. Finally she stepped back, exhaling slowly. I did not love him the way humans love, she said. I do not know if I can. Rowan's throat tightened. Seraphine's voice dropped lower. But I know this. When he looked at me, something in me wanted to become softer. Rowan swallowed hard. And that, Seraphine whispered, terrified me more than any blade. Rowan's chest ached. He didn't know what to do with this confession. It didn't make her less dangerous. It made her more complicated. Seraphine turned away, carrying the box back to the wardrobe. She slid it into its place, tucked beneath gowns like a secret buried under silk. When she turned back, her mask was back in place, queenly calm. It is nearly dawn, she said. You will meet me in the throne hall at dusk. We will speak of your decision. Rowan's pulse hammered. And Leora? Seraphine's eyes narrowed. She will remain in Briar Hollow. For now. Rowan's breath shuddered. Promise me you won't hurt her. Seraphine's smile was thin. Promises are fragile. You should know that. Rowan stepped forward, anger flaring. Then swear it. Seraphine's gaze sharpened. You do not command me. Rowan's hands clenched. I'm not commanding. I'm begging. The word tasted like ash in his mouth. Seraphine paused. Something flickered in her eyes, surprise perhaps or something else. She took a slow step toward him. You would humble yourself, she murmured, for her. Rowan's voice was low. Yes. Seraphine studied him for a long moment. Then she said quietly, I will not harm her, unless you force me to. Rowan's stomach twisted. It was not comfort. It was conditional mercy. But it was something. Seraphine turned toward the door again. As she reached it, she paused without looking back. Rowan, she said softly, do not mistake my curiosity for kindness. Rowan swallowed. Seraphine's voice dropped to a whisper, almost intimate. I am still the queen, she said. And queens do not lose what they claim. Then she left, and the door shut softly behind her. Rowan stood alone again, the echo of her words settling into his bones. Queens do not lose what they claim. And Rowan realized, with a cold certainty, that Seraphine had already begun to claim him. Dusk in Vesperhold did not arrive like an ending. It arrived like a reopening of wounds. The palace stirred as if waking, candles flaring, torches lit, distant footsteps echoing through stone. The vampires emerged from their quiet daytime stillness with the elegance of predators stretching after sleep. Rowan was escorted to the throne hall by two guards whose faces revealed nothing. They didn't speak. They didn't threaten. Their silence was worse than cruelty. It made him feel like his fate had already been decided. The hall looked different at night. The crimson candlelight was stronger, casting deeper shadows in the Gothic arches. The stained glass windows were black mirrors now, reflecting only candle flames and the pale figures moving in the gloom. And on the dais, Seraphine sat on her throne, bat and rose motifs carved around her like a cage of symbols. Her gown tonight was pure black, the silver embroidery glinting like frost. Her hair was pinned back, exposing the long curve of her neck. Rowan's gaze caught on that neck and he hated himself for noticing. He approached the dais, knees stiff, jaw clenched. The court was not crowded, but it was not empty either. A handful of nobles lingered in the shadows, vampires with jeweled rings and cold smiles, watching Rowan like he was entertainment. Lord Malrek stood to the side of the dais, hands clasped behind his back. His obsidian eyes fixed on Rowan with something like polite interest. Rowan stopped at the foot of the steps. Seraphine leaned forward slightly. "Have you decided?" she asked. Rowan's heart hammered. He had spent the day in torment, weighing impossible choices. If he swore fealty, he would become a weapon for the Night Court, bound to Seraphine's will. He might be allowed to remain near Leora, but under the Queen's shadow forever. If he refused, he would run. Tomorrow's plan turned into tonight's desperation, and risk Seraphine's wrath hunting them down. Either way, his life was no longer his. Rowan lifted his gaze to Seraphine. He thought of Leora's face, her hands, her laugh, the way she had looked at him like he was capable of goodness. He thought of the kings who would never let him leave without punishment. He thought of Seraphine's letters, the poet's words, the way even an immortal queen could be haunted by what she had destroyed. Rowan took a slow breath. "I will swear," he said. A murmur rippled through the watching vampires. Malrek's lips curved faintly. Seraphine's expression did not change, but her eyes brightened like embers fed air. "Say it clearly," she commanded. Rowan's throat tightened. His pride screamed, his fear screamed louder. "I will swear fealty," Rowan repeated, voice steady despite the tremor in his gut. "To the Night Court. To you." Seraphine's gaze held him. "And what do you offer in return?" she asked. Rowan swallowed. "My service. My sword. My life." Seraphine's lips curved slightly. "And your love." The court went very still. Rowan's stomach dropped. He forced himself to meet her gaze. "My love is not yours to command." Seraphine's smile sharpened. "Everything in my domain is mine to command." Rowan's hands clenched. He could feel the eyes of the nobles on him, hungry for humiliation. He spoke carefully. "I will serve you. But I will not betray her." Seraphine's gaze narrowed. For a heartbeat, Rowan feared she would refuse, would punish him for daring to set a boundary. Instead, Seraphine leaned back in her throne, regarding him as if he'd become more interesting. "Very well," she said softly. "Then kneel." Rowan's breath hitched. He looked at the steps leading up, at the throne towering above. Kneeling was not just ceremony. It was submission. He thought of his mother's face the night she'd given him the charm. He thought of Leora's eyes. Rowan lowered himself onto one knee. The marble was cold beneath his leg. Seraphine descended from the throne again, moving with slow, deliberate grace until she stood before him. A servant approached silently, carrying a silver dagger on a velvet cushion. Rowan's pulse hammered. Seraphine took the dagger. The blade was thin, elegant, gleaming like moonlight. She looked down at Rowan. "This oath," she said, voice clear enough for the court to hear, "is bound by blood." Rowan swallowed hard. Seraphine's gaze flicked briefly to Malrek, then back to Rowan. "Hold out your hand." Rowan extended his palm upward. Seraphine pressed the dagger's edge to his skin. The cut was shallow but sharp. Blood welled, bright and startling against his pale palm. Rowan's breath shuddered. Seraphine held his bleeding hand for a moment, her fingers cool against his warm skin. Then she lifted his hand toward her lips. The court held its breath. Rowan's stomach clenched. Seraphine's lips touched his palm. Her mouth was cold. The sensation was intimate in a way that made his skin prickle. He felt the brief scrape of Fong, and then a pull like his blood was being drawn not just from his body but from something deeper. Rowan gasped quietly. Seraphine drank, slow, controlled, her eyes locked on his. Rowan's vision blurred at the edges. His heart raced. Heat spread through him like wildfire. Then Seraphine released his hand and Rowan's blood stopped flowing, as if the wound had sealed itself. Rowan stared at his palm in shock. The cut was gone, leaving only a faint line like a memory. Seraphine's lips glistened faintly. Her eyes burned brighter. "You are bound," she said softly so only he could hear. Rowan's breath came ragged. "What does that mean?" Seraphine smiled, and the smile was dangerous and intimate. "It means," she whispered, "I will always know where you are." Rowan's stomach dropped. Seraphine stepped back, raising her voice again for the court. "Rowan Vale is now my sworn knight." A murmur swept through the hall. Approval, amusement, curiosity. Malrek inclined his head slightly as if satisfied. Rowan remained kneeling, numb. Seraphine leaned down, close enough that her hair brushed his cheek like shadow. "And now," she whispered, "we will speak of Leora." Rowan's chest tightened. "You promised?" Seraphine's eyes gleamed. "I promised conditional mercy. And you have given me reason to keep it." Rowan's voice shook. "What do you want?" Seraphine straightened, gaze sweeping the hall. "Leave us." The command was quiet, but it carried authority like a wave. The nobles withdrew without protest. Even Malrek stepped back, fading into shadow. Soon, only Seraphine and Rowan remained in the vast hall. Seraphine returned to the dais, sitting on the throne again. The distance made her seem larger, more untouchable. Rowan rose slowly, his knees stiff. Seraphine studied him. "You bound yourself to me," she said. "Now tell me, will you still try to run?" Rowan's throat tightened. "No." Seraphine's gaze sharpened. "Say it like you mean it." Rowan's hands clenched. He forced himself to speak with conviction. "I will not run," he said. "Not if it endangers her." Seraphine's eyes gleamed. "Good." Rowan's jaw tightened. "So she's safe." Seraphine's smile was thin. "Safe is a human fantasy. But she will live." Rowan's breath shuddered. It was not enough, but it was something. Seraphine leaned forward slightly, her gaze intent. "Tomorrow," she said, "you will ride to Briar Hollow." Rowan's heart lurched. "Why?" Seraphine's eyes glinted. "Because you will bring her here." Rowan froze. His voice came out raw. "No." Seraphine's expression did not change, but the air around her seemed to sharpen. "You swore fealty," she said calmly. "You will obey." Rowan's hands shook. "You said she could stay." Seraphine's gaze narrowed. "And you believed that would last?" Rowan's chest tightened with rage. "You're doing this to hurt me." Seraphine's eyes flashed. "I am doing this to protect my throne." Rowan's breath came ragged. "From a village healer?" Seraphine's voice dropped lower. "From what she is." Rowan stared, confusion and fear tangling. "What she is?" Seraphine's gaze held his, and for the first time her calm seemed to strain. "She is not merely human," Seraphine said softly. Rowan's stomach dropped. Seraphine leaned back in the throne, fingers gripping the armrests as if restraining something. "She carries blood older than your king's," Seraphine murmured. "Blood that once challenged mine." Rowan's breath caught. "You're lying." Seraphine's eyes flared. "Do not accuse me of lies when your own oath is still wet." Rowan staggered back a step, feeling suddenly dizzy. The blood bond, whatever it was, seemed to hum beneath his skin like a second pulse. Seraphine's voice was quiet, almost cruel. "Bring her to me, Rowan. Or I will send Malrek." Rowan's stomach twisted. He remembered Malrek's calm smile, the way his eyes had scanned Briar Hollow like a man selecting livestock. Rowan's voice cracked. "If you harm her." Seraphine's gaze sharpened. "If you defy me, your bond will hurt you more than any blade." Rowan froze. "What?" Seraphine's smile was faint. "You are mine now. And mine means controllable." Rowan's hands trembled. The realization hit him like a blow. He had sworn fealty to save Leora. and Seraphine had bound him so he could never truly refuse her. The court was gone, the hall empty, but Rowan felt more watched than ever, watched by the bond humming in his veins, watched by the queen's knowing eyes. Seraphine's voice softened as if offering consolation. "You will bring her here," she repeated. "And then, we will see what love survives." Rowan stood trembling at the foot of the dais, feeling the weight of his oath settle on him like chains made of silk. He had chosen. And the consequence was coming. Rowan left Vesperhold that night with a rider's cloak thrown over his shoulders and a night court sigil pinned at his throat like a brand. The palace gates opened without sound, black iron parting for him as if he belonged. He did not. The horse beneath him was sleek and dark, its eyes too intelligent. A vampire steed bred for silence. It moved like shadow over the damp road. Rowan rode hard, the cold wind biting his face, the forest rushing past like a blur of teeth. He should have felt relief at leaving the palace. Instead he felt hollow. The blood bond pulsed under his skin, a faint ache that flared whenever he thought of defiance. It was not pain yet, more like a warning, the way a bruise warns you not to press. He hated Seraphine for it. And he hated himself more for kneeling. As dawn threatened the horizon with a faint paling, Rowan saw the familiar outline of Briar Hollow's ridge. The village lay quiet, smoke rising from chimneys, roofs patched with frost. It looked ordinary, humble, fragile. And that fragility made Rowan's chest ache. He rode in through the main path, the night court sigil catching the early light. A few villagers paused, eyes widening. Fear flickered, then confusion. They recognized Rowan but not the emblem. Children stared from doorways. Dogs barked uncertainly. Rowan dismounted near the well. His boots hit the ground with a heaviness that felt like guilt. A voice called his name. "Rowan?" He turned. Leora stood at the edge of the square, wrapped in a wool cloak, hair braided back. Her cheeks were pink from cold. Her eyes, warm, steady, locked onto his face. Relief flooded Rowan so hard it almost knocked him off balance. Then her gaze dropped to the sigil at his throat. Her brows knit. "What is that?" Rowan's throat tightened. He forced himself to walk toward her, each step feeling like he was approaching an execution. "Leora," he said softly. She didn't move away, but her posture stiffened, wary. "Why are you here so early? And why?" Her gaze flicked again to the sigil. "Why do you wear that?" Rowan swallowed hard. "I need to speak to you. Alone." Leora studied him for a long moment. Her eyes flicked over his face as if reading bruises that weren't visible. Finally she nodded. "My cottage." She turned and walked briskly through the village, Rowan following. Her cottage was small, built of stone and timber, herbs hung drying above the door. Inside it smelled of lavender and smoke and crushed leaves. Leora set a kettle on the hearth without speaking. Her hands moved with practiced efficiency, but Rowan saw the slight tremor in her fingers. She turned to face him. "Tell me," she demanded quietly. "What happened?" Rowan's chest tightened. He wanted to tell her everything. He wanted to confess the truth wine, the blood oath, the queen's threat. But the bond pulsed sharply the moment he thought of revealing details. Rowan grimaced, a sudden flare of pain behind his ribs. He staggered slightly. Leora's eyes widened. "Rowan." Rowan raised a hand, breathing hard. "I'm fine." Leora stepped closer, her brow furrowed. "You're not." Rowan forced himself to steady his breathing. The bond's ache eased when he stopped trying to speak too much. He realized with sick clarity, Seraphine had not only bound his body. She had bound his words. Rowan looked at Leora and his voice came out strained. "I can't tell you everything." Leora's expression hardened. "What do you mean you can't?" Rowan swallowed. "There are rules." Leora stared at him, incredulous. "Rules? Since when have you cared about rules?" Rowan flinched. "Since they can kill you." Leora's face paled slightly. "Who?" Rowan's hands clenched. "The Queen." Leora's eyes narrowed. "You went to Vesperhold." Rowan nodded slowly. "I was summoned." Leora's gaze sharpened and fear flickered behind her steadiness. "Why?" Rowan's throat tightened. "She knows about us." Leora's breath caught. For a moment she looked younger, rawer. Then she squared her shoulders. "So what?" "Let her know." Rowan's laugh was bitter. "It's not that simple." Leora's eyes locked on his. "Tell me what she wants." Rowan's stomach churned. The bond pulsed again, warning. He chose his words carefully, like stepping over traps. She wants you, Rowan said quietly. Leora's brows knit. What? Rowan's voice cracked. She wants you brought to her. Leora stared, disbelief turning to anger. No. Rowan stepped closer, desperation spilling. Leora, listen to me. If I don't, she'll send Malrek. Leora's jaw tightened. Then we run. Rowan froze. The word run was exactly what he'd promised her. It was the plan that had been ripped from him like skin. Rowan's chest ached. We can't. Leora's eyes flashed. We can. Rowan's voice came out raw. She has me bound. Leora's gaze flicked to his throat, to the sigil. That's what that is? Rowan nodded. I swore fealty. Leora's face went utterly still. For a heartbeat, Rowan thought she might slap him. Instead, her voice came out quiet, shaking. You swore yourself to her. Rowan swallowed hard. To protect you. Leora's eyes filled with something that wasn't just anger. Hurt. Rowan's chest tightened painfully. Leora. She took a step back, shaking her head. You promised me we'd leave. Rowan's throat burned. I meant it. Leora's voice rose, cracking. Then why are you here telling me to walk into the Vampire Queen's palace like a lamb? Rowan flinched as if struck. Because if you don't, she'll come for you anyway. Leora stared at him, breathing hard. Then she turned away, hands clenched, pacing the small cottage like a trapped animal. Rowan watched her, helpless. The kettle began to whistle, shrill, frantic. Leora yanked it off the fire with too much force and slammed it down. Water sloshed. She spun back to Rowan, eyes blazing. Tell me the truth. Is this what you want? Rowan's breath caught. No. Leora's voice was sharp. Then why does it feel like you've already surrendered? Rowan's hands trembled. Because I have to choose between being your lover and being your shield. Leora's gaze softened slightly, but her hurt remained. You can be both. Rowan swallowed, voice breaking. Not in her world. Silence stretched. Leora's shoulders sagged slightly, as if exhaustion finally reached her. She walked closer, stopping inches from him. Her eyes searched his face. What did she do to you? She whispered. Rowan hesitated. The bond pulsed, warning. He forced himself to speak through it, careful. She bound me, he said. With blood. Leora's face tightened with horror. Her hand lifted instinctively toward his chest, then stopped, as if afraid to touch what belonged to someone else now. Rowan's throat tightened at that hesitation. I'm still me, he whispered. Leora's eyes glistened. Are you? The question pierced him. Rowan's voice broke. I don't know. Leora reached out then, finally placing her hand against his cheek. Her palm was warm, human, real. Rowan leaned into it like a starving man. Leora's voice was soft now, trembling. If we go to her, if we walk into her palace, what happens? Rowan swallowed. The bond pulsed, but he could answer this. I don't know, he admitted. But I know this. If we don't go, she will make it worse. Leora's jaw tightened. She lowered her hand. For a long moment she stared at the hearth's dying embers. Then she nodded once, sharply, as if making a decision that tasted like blood. Fine, she said. We go. Rowan's chest tightened with relief and dread. Leora lifted her chin, eyes fierce. But not as her prey. Rowan frowned. What do you mean? Leora's gaze locked on his. If she wants me because of what I am, then I need to know what that is. Rowan's stomach twisted. Leora, I don't think you understand. Leora's voice cut in, quiet and iron. I understand enough. She's afraid. And queens don't fear village healers for nothing. Rowan stared at her, shaken by her courage. Leora grabbed a satchel from a hook and began stuffing supplies into it. Herbs, bandages, small vials. Rowan watched, helpless. We should leave before night. Leora shook her head. We leave now. If she expects me tomorrow, we give her no time to change the game. Rowan's pulse hammered. He stepped closer, voice low. Leora. I'm sorry. Leora paused, hands stilling. She looked at him, eyes wet but steady. I don't need your apology, she whispered. I need you to stay alive. Rowan's throat tightened. Leora stepped closer, pressing her forehead briefly against his. The gesture was small, intimate, heartbreaking. Then she pulled back, shouldering the satchel. Let's go, she said. Rowan nodded, though fear twisted inside him. As they stepped out into the village square, villagers stared, sensing something wrong. Leora didn't stop to explain. Rowan mounted his horse first, then reached down to help her up behind him. Her arms wrapped around his waist. The warmth of her body against his back made his chest ache. He rode out of Briar Hollow with Leora clinging to him, the night court sigil gleaming at his throat like a warning. And as the forest swallowed them, Rowan realized the cruelest part. He was bringing the woman he loved into the jaws of the queen. And he didn't know if he was saving her or delivering her. The road back to Vesperhold felt longer than it should have. The forest thickened around them, branches clawing at the sky. The light dimmed as if the trees drank it. Even the wind seemed quieter, as if afraid to disturb what slept beneath the roots. Leora sat behind Rowan, her arms around him, her breath warm against his back. She didn't speak much. Neither did he. Words felt dangerous now, too easily twisted, too easily overheard by forces Rowan couldn't see. But Leora's silence was not fear. It was strategy. Rowan could feel it in the way her grip tightened whenever the woods grew darker, in the way she lifted her head as if listening not just to sounds but to something beneath them. At one point, as they crossed a narrow bridge over a black river, Leora murmured, "Do you feel that?" Rowan's throat tightened. "Feel what?" Leora's voice was quiet. "Like something pulling." Rowan's stomach dropped. The bond pulsed beneath his skin in response, a faint ache. He forced his voice steady. "Yes." Leora fell silent again. By the time Vesperhold's black spires rose from the horizon like broken teeth, night had fully claimed the sky. The palace gates opened as they approached, iron parting soundlessly. Torches flared along the path, lighting their way in red-gold pools. Leora's arms tightened around Rowan. "This place feels like a mouth," she whispered. Rowan's voice was low. "Don't show fear." Leora let out a short, humorless laugh. "I'm not afraid. I'm angry." Rowan swallowed hard. They dismounted in the courtyard. The air smelled of wet stone and roses. Guards waited, silent, pale, watching. A servant approached, bowing slightly to Rowan and then to Leora, as if she were already royalty. "The queen awaits," the servant said. Rowan's chest tightened. They were led through corridors and arches until Rowan recognized the doors to Seraphine's private chamber. His stomach churned. The doors opened. Seraphine stood inside as if she'd been waiting all along. Her gown tonight was deep red, almost the color of fresh blood, and the silver embroidery caught the candlelight like frost on a wound. Her hair was loose, flowing over her shoulders. Her crimson eyes fixed immediately on Leora. For a heartbeat, the room held its breath. Leora stepped forward, chin lifted, meeting the queen's gaze without flinching. Seraphine's lips curved faintly. "So," she murmured, "the light comes willingly." Rowan felt the bond pulse sharply, warning him not to speak. Leora's voice was steady. "I came because I was told you would hunt me if I didn't." Seraphine's smile widened slightly. "Honesty. How refreshing." Leora didn't bow. She didn't avert her gaze. She stood as if she were Rowan's equal, not Seraphine's subject. Rowan's heart ached with pride and fear. Seraphine's gaze flicked briefly to Rowan. "You obeyed." Rowan's jaw clenched, but he remained silent. Seraphine stepped closer to Leora, moving with predatory grace. The distance between them felt like a tightening noose. Leora's hands curled into fists at her sides, but she didn't step back. Seraphine stopped inches away. "You smell like mortal warmth," Seraphine said softly. "Like sunlight trapped in skin." Leora's voice was quiet. "And you smell like roses growing on graves." Seraphine's eyes glinted, amused. Rowan's breath caught. Leora was provoking her. Seraphine's smile sharpened. "Bold." Leora's gaze didn't waver. "Tell me why you wanted me." Seraphine tilted her head. "Do you truly not know?" Leora's jaw tightened. "No." Seraphine's eyes lingered on Leora's face as if studying bone structure, the curve of her mouth, the line of her throat. "Interesting," Seraphine murmured. "You look like her." Rowan's stomach dropped. "Like who?" he blurted, and immediately the bond flared, pain blooming behind his ribs like fire. Rowan staggered, gritting his teeth. Leora spun toward him, alarmed. "Rowan." Seraphine's gaze flicked to him, calm and cold. "I told you. Defiance hurts." Rowan's breath came ragged. He forced himself upright. Leora's eyes narrowed at Seraphine. "You did this to him." Seraphine's smile was thin. He did it to himself when he chose to kneel. Leora's face hardened. She turned back to Seraphine, voice sharp. Who do I look like? Seraphine's expression shifted. Something like old bitterness crossed her features. Someone I buried, she said softly. Leora's throat tightened. Then why bring me here? To bury me too? Seraphine's eyes flared. No. The word came out sharper than Rowan had heard from her before. Seraphine took a slow breath, regaining control. I brought you here because your blood carries an inheritance. Leora's brows knit. My blood. Seraphine's gaze was intense now. Do you know who your mother was? Leora stiffened. A midwife. Seraphine's lips curved faintly. And your father? Leora's jaw clenched. A man who died before I was born. Seraphine's eyes gleamed. Or so you were told. Leora stared at her, shaken. Rowan's chest tightened. He could feel the twist coming like thunder in the air. Seraphine stepped away, moving toward the table with the decanter. She poured dark liquid into a glass, truth wine again. She held it out, not to Rowan this time but to Leora. Drink, Seraphine said softly. Leora's gaze narrowed. No. Seraphine's smile sharpened. Then remain ignorant. Leora's hands trembled slightly, but her chin stayed lifted. If I drink that, you'll take my secrets. Seraphine's eyes glinted. I will take only what you have hidden from yourself. Leora stared at the glass, conflict flickering. Rowan stepped forward, pain flaring from the bond. He clenched his teeth, voice strained. Leora, don't. Seraphine's gaze snapped to him. The pain intensified, sharp and punishing. Rowan gasped, dropping to one knee. Leora's eyes widened with fury. Stop it. Seraphine's voice was calm. Then he should stop speaking out of turn. Leora's hands clenched. She looked between Rowan and Seraphine, her breathing hard. Finally, she snatched the glass from Seraphine's hand. If I drink, she said, voice shaking, you stop hurting him. Seraphine smiled faintly. Agreed. Leora lifted the glass. Rowan forced himself to breathe, watching her with panic. Leora drank. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then Leora's eyes widened. Her pupils dilated. Her face went pale. She swayed. Rowan lunged forward, catching her, pain flaring from the bond, but he didn't care. Leora gripped his sleeve, nails digging into fabric. Rowan, she whispered, voice distant as if speaking through water. I remember. Seraphine watched, expression intent. Leora's breath came fast. A woman, she whispered. A woman with hair like night. With eyes like. She stared up at Seraphine with sudden, dawning horror. Like yours? Leora whispered. Rowan's stomach dropped. Seraphine stepped closer, her face unreadable. Yes. Leora's voice trembled. She was in my dreams. Since I was a child. Calling my name. Seraphine's gaze sharpened. Not your name. Leora's breath hitched. She called me something else. Rowan's chest tightened. What? Leora's eyes flickered, unfocused. Aurelia, she whispered. The name hit Rowan like a blow. Seraphine's face went very still. Aurelia, Seraphine repeated, voice barely audible. Leora's body trembled in Rowan's arms. Who is that? Seraphine stared at her as if seeing a ghost. Then slowly Seraphine knelt before Leora. The queen of the night court, kneeling. Rowan's breath caught. Seraphine's voice was quiet, stripped of its usual authority. Aurelia, she whispered, was my sister. The words landed like thunder. Rowan's mind reeled. Leora stared, shaking, eyes wide with disbelief. I don't have, she began. Seraphine's eyes burned. You do. Leora's voice cracked. That's impossible. Seraphine's smile was bitter. Immortals have many ways of making the impossible happen. Rowan's stomach churned. What are you saying? Seraphine's gaze flicked to him, cold again. I am saying the woman you love is the last living vessel of my sister's bloodline. Leora shook her head violently, tears forming. No, I'm human. Seraphine's hand lifted, hovering near Leora's face. Human, yes, but not ordinary. Leora's breath came ragged. Why does that matter? Seraphine's eyes darkened. Because Aurelia tried to take my throne. Rowan's chest tightened. Seraphine's voice grew sharper. She believed the night court should be ruled with mercy, with softness, with love. The word came out like poison. She gathered supporters, Seraphine continued. Vampires who wanted to feed less, to coexist more. She threatened everything I built. Leora stared, trembling. So you killed her? Seraphine's jaw tightened. Yes. The admission was blunt, brutal. Leora's face crumpled with horror. And now you want to kill me too? Seraphine's eyes flashed. No. Leora laughed bitterly, tears spilling. Then what? You want to use me? Seraphine's gaze softened, just barely. I want to know if Aurelia's blood can rise again. Rowan's stomach twisted. Leora's voice shook with fury. I'm not your sister. Seraphine leaned closer, voice low. No. But you carry her light. And that light, if it spreads, could burn my court to ash. Rowan's chest tightened. So you brought her here to control her. Seraphine's eyes glinted. To contain her. Leora's hands clenched, shaking. I'm not a threat. Seraphine's voice was quiet, almost sorrowful. You don't know what you are capable of. Leora stared at Rowan, desperate. Rowan, tell her she's wrong. Rowan's throat tightened. You wanted to. But the bond pulsed, and he realized Seraphine's words weren't entirely lies. Something in Leora's presence had always felt brighter, stronger than mere courage. Rowan's voice came out broken. I don't know. Leora recoiled as if slapped. The hurt in her eyes was worse than any bond pain. Seraphine stood, regaining her queenly height. You will stay in Vesperhold, she told Leora. You will learn what you are. And Rowan will remain at my side. Leora's voice rose raw. No. Rowan. Rowan's hands shook. He reached for her, but the bond pulsed again, a tight leash around his chest. Seraphine's gaze sharpened. Enough. The air in the room shifted, heavy with power. The candles flared. Leora's breath hitched as if the very atmosphere pressed against her. Seraphine stepped closer to Rowan, eyes burning. You wanted to love her, Seraphine whispered. Now you will watch what love awakens. Rowan's chest ached. Leora stood trembling, tears drying on her cheeks, fury hardening her face into something fierce. She lifted her chin. If I carry your sister's blood, she said, voice shaking but strong, then maybe your sister wasn't wrong. Seraphine's eyes flashed. Leora continued, staring straight at the queen. Maybe the night court doesn't need a queen who kills what she fears. Silence slammed down. Rowan's breath caught. This was the twist. This was the point of no return. Seraphine's expression went utterly still. And Rowan realized with sick dread that Leora had just declared war in the queen's own chamber. The palace did not erupt into violence immediately. That was the most frightening part. Seraphine did not strike Leora for her defiance. She did not bare her fangs or call guards to drag her away in chains. She simply stared. And in that stare was the weight of centuries, of wars and betrayals, of hunger disciplined into rule. Then Seraphine smiled. It was not a warm smile. It was the smile of a blade recognizing another blade. You are brave, Seraphine said softly. And you are naive. Leora's chin remained lifted, though her hands trembled. Maybe. Seraphine stepped closer, circling Leora slowly, like a predator studying a new kind of prey. You think mercy is strength, Seraphine murmured. You think love makes kingdoms softer. Leora's voice was quiet. I think fear makes them rotten. Seraphine's smile sharpened. Fear makes them obedient. Rowan stood between them, body tense, feeling like a rope stretched to breaking. Seraphine's gaze flicked to him. You see? This is what your love brings into my house. Rowan's jaw clenched. She's not wrong. The bond flared, pain searing behind his ribs. Rowan gasped, dropping to one knee again. Leora spun toward him. Stop hurting him. Seraphine's voice was calm. Then he should remember his place. Leora's eyes burned with fury. His place is not beneath you. Seraphine's gaze sharpened, and for the first time Rowan saw genuine anger slip through the queen's control. You speak as if you belong here, Seraphine hissed softly. As if you have the right to challenge me. Leora's voice shook but didn't break. If your court stands on fear, then anyone has the right. Seraphine's eyes flared crimson, brighter, dangerous. Rowan forced himself upright, breathing hard, pain fading into a deep ache. He looked at Seraphine, voice strained. Enough. You brought her here, don't punish her for speaking. Seraphine's gaze snapped to him. The bond tightened like a fist. Rowan clenched his jaw, refusing to cry out. Seraphine watched him suffer with cold calm. "You are learning," she said softly. "Words have consequences." Rowan's voice came out rough. "Then let them have consequences for me, not her." Seraphine's eyes narrowed. "You offer yourself again." Rowan swallowed hard. "Yes." Leora stared at him, horror and love tangled in her gaze. "Rowan, don't." Rowan shook his head slightly, a silent plea. "Trust me." Seraphine studied them both for a long moment. Then she turned away, moving toward the bed draped in black silk as if she needed distance to think. When she spoke again, her voice was quieter, colder. "You will stay in the palace," she said to Leora. "You will be watched. You will not leave the inner grounds without my permission." Leora's jaw clenched. "So I'm a prisoner." Seraphine's smile was thin. "Call it what you like." Leora's eyes flashed. "And Rowan?" Seraphine's gaze flicked to Rowan. "Rowan is mine." The words were a chain dropped in the open. Leora flinched as if struck. Rowan's chest tightened. He forced himself to speak, voice low. "I swore to protect her." "That doesn't change." Seraphine's eyes gleamed. "Protection is a convenient word. It can mean cage." Rowan's jaw clenched. Seraphine turned back to Leora, her voice almost conversational. "You will be given rooms in the East Wing. You will eat well. You will learn." Leora's voice was bitter. "Learn what?" "How to become your sister." Seraphine's eyes flashed. "How not to die." Leora's gaze hardened. "Then teach me." Seraphine's brows lifted slightly. "Eager." Leora's voice was quiet, fierce. "If my blood is dangerous, I want to know. Because I won't let it be used to hurt people." Seraphine's smile was unreadable. "We'll see." She lifted her hand and the door to the chamber opened without touch. 2 guards appeared, silent, waiting. Seraphine gestured toward Leora. Leora hesitated, looking at Rowan. Rowan's chest ached. He stepped forward despite the bond's warning, placing his hand gently on her arm. Leora's breath hitched at his touch. "I'm sorry," Rowan whispered. Leora's eyes glistened. "Don't apologize," she whispered back. "Just don't disappear." Rowan swallowed. "I won't." Leora leaned closer, pressing her forehead briefly to his again, a small act of defiance in front of the queen. Then she turned and walked out with the guards, her cloak trailing behind her like a flag. Rowan watched until the door shut. The silence left behind felt like a wound. Seraphine stood across the room watching him. "You love her," she said softly as if tasting the words. Rowan's voice was low. "Yes." Seraphine's smile was faint, almost wistful. "It's inconvenient." Rowan's hands clenched. "Why did you really bring her here?" Seraphine's gaze sharpened. "I told you." Rowan shook his head. "You told me what you wanted me to believe." Seraphine's eyes flashed, but she didn't deny it. Rowan forced himself to step closer, pain flaring faintly but manageable. "Your sister," Rowan said, voice strained, "wanted to rule with mercy. You killed her. Now Leora carries her blood. And you're afraid that mercy will rise again." Seraphine's jaw tightened. Rowan continued, voice raw. "But you didn't kill Leora." "You could have." "You didn't." Seraphine's eyes burned. Rowan's throat tightened. "Why?" Seraphine stared at him for a long moment. The candles flickered, casting shadows across her face like moving bars. Finally Seraphine spoke, voice quiet. "Because," she said, "if Aurelia's blood lives again, then perhaps I did not have to kill her." Rowan's breath caught. Seraphine's eyes looked almost haunted. "Perhaps the world I built was not the only way." Rowan stared, stunned. Seraphine's voice dropped lower, bitter. "And if that is true, then I am not a queen." Rowan's chest tightened. "You're afraid of being wrong." Seraphine's eyes flashed. "I am afraid of being weak." Rowan swallowed. "Those aren't the same." Seraphine stepped closer suddenly, so fast Rowan barely saw her move. Her face was inches from his. "Do not lecture me," she whispered, voice sharp. "You are mine. You will do what I command." Rowan's breath came ragged, not from fear alone. Her closeness was suffocating, intimate, dangerous. Seraphine's gaze flicked to his mouth again, then back to his eyes. "And you will not," she murmured, "forget who holds your leash." Rowan's voice came out rough. Do you enjoy this? Seraphine's eyes narrowed. Enjoy? Rowan swallowed hard. Hurting me, claiming me, watching me suffer. Seraphine's lips curved faintly, but there was no humor. I enjoy control. Rowan's chest tightened. Because without it you might feel. Seraphine's eyes flashed like sparks. Before Rowan could react, Seraphine's hand gripped his collar, yanking him forward. Her fangs gleamed. Rowan's breath caught, body tense, expecting pain, expecting punishment. Instead, Seraphine pressed her lips to his. The kiss was cold, fierce, and utterly shocking. Rowan froze for a heartbeat, then his body responded with traitorous heat. The kiss tasted like roses and iron, like hunger restrained. Seraphine's hand held him in place like a vice. Rowan's mind spun. Leora's face flashed in his mind, and guilt slammed into him like a fist. He tried to pull back, but the bond flared, pain and pleasure tangled, trapping him. Seraphine broke the kiss abruptly, eyes blazing. Rowan stood trembling, breath ragged, mouth cold where hers had been. Seraphine's voice was a whisper. Yes, she said. I feel. Rowan stared, shaken. Seraphine's gaze was fierce, almost angry with herself. And that is why you are dangerous. Rowan's voice cracked. Why did you? Seraphine's smile was thin. Because you needed to understand something. Rowan's pulse thundered. What? Seraphine leaned close again, voice low and deadly. You are not the only one with hunger, she whispered. And love is not the only thing that can bind. Rowan's chest tightened, dread and desire warring inside him. Seraphine released his collar and stepped back, composed again as if she hadn't just shattered him. You will sleep, she said calmly. Tomorrow your service begins. Rowan stood trembling, lips cold, heart in ruins. He had sworn to protect Leora. And now Seraphine had branded him with another kind of betrayal, one that lived on his mouth. Rowan woke with the taste of cold roses still on his lips. For a moment he didn't know where he was. The ceiling above him was carved stone, the air heavy with velvet and candle smoke. Then memory slammed into him. Seraphine's mouth, Leora's eyes, the bond burning under his skin. He sat up abruptly. His body felt wrong. Not injured, not sick, just tuned. Like every sense had been sharpened. He could hear footsteps far down the corridor. He could smell the faint metallic tang of blood somewhere distant, like a whisper. He pressed a hand to his chest, feeling his heartbeat. It was steady. Too steady. He dressed quickly in the clothes left for him, black garments, tailored, almost regal. The night court sigil remained at his throat, impossible to ignore. A knock came at the door. Rowan opened it to find Malrek standing there, expression polite, eyes unreadable. Sir Rowan, Malrek said smoothly. The Queen requests your presence. Rowan's jaw tightened. Of course. Malrek stepped aside, gesturing for Rowan to follow. They walked in silence through corridors that seemed to shift in the dim light. Rowan couldn't help but ask, voice low, Where is Leora? Malrek's lips curved faintly. Safe. Rowan's hands clenched. That's not an answer. Malrek glanced at him, eyes like polished stone. It is the only one you are entitled to. Rowan swallowed hard, anger burning. They reached a training hall, a vast chamber lined with weapons and banners. Torches cast flickering light across polished floors. Several vampire guards stood watching, arms crossed, their eyes gleaming with mild amusement. Seraphine stood at the center, dressed not in a gown but in fitted black leather, silver accents at her wrists and throat. Her hair was braided back, exposing her neck like a challenge. Rowan's stomach tightened. She looked like war. Seraphine turned as he entered, crimson eyes locking on him. You're late, she said. Rowan's jaw clenched. I came as soon as I was summoned. Seraphine's smile was faint. Summons are not requests. Rowan didn't respond. Seraphine gestured toward a rack of swords. Choose. Rowan frowned. For what? Seraphine's eyes gleamed. To learn what it means to be mine. Rowan's stomach twisted. He stepped toward the rack, fingers brushing the hilts. Most were too light, too balanced, forged with vampire craftsmanship. He chose a plain blade, heavier, familiar. Seraphine picked up a sword as well, slender, elegant, deadly. She faced him, posture relaxed. Attack me, she said. Rowan stared. You want me to? Seraphine's gaze sharpened. Attack. or I will assume you have already surrendered. Rowan's hands tightened around the sword. He didn't want to fight her. He didn't want to give her another excuse to hurt him. But he knew refusal would be punished. Rowan moved. He swung fast, aiming not to kill but to test. Seraphine parried effortlessly, her movements fluid, almost graceful. She stepped inside his guard, tapping his ribs with her blade in a spot that would have been fatal if she'd used force. Rowan gritted his teeth and backed away. Again, Seraphine said. Rowan attacked harder, frustration fueling him. He swung, thrust, feinted. Seraphine blocked every strike, her expression calm, almost bored. Then she moved, too fast, and Rowan felt the flat of her blade smack his wrist. His sword flew from his hand, clattering across the floor. Rowan cursed under his breath. Seraphine tilted her head. Pick it up. Rowan bent to retrieve it. As his fingers closed around the hilt, the bond pulsed sharply, warning. He froze. Seraphine's voice was soft. Do you feel it? Rowan's jaw tightened. Feel what? Seraphine stepped closer, circling him slowly. The bond. It reacts when you intend to disobey. When you intend to harm me beyond what I allow. Rowan swallowed hard. Seraphine's eyes gleamed. It will keep you honest. Rowan's hands clenched around the sword. It will keep me enslaved. Seraphine's smile was thin. Call it what you like. Rowan's voice shook with anger. You kissed me. Seraphine's eyes flashed. Yes. Rowan's throat tightened. Why? Seraphine studied him for a long moment, then said quietly, because you looked at me like you hated me. Rowan stared, stunned. Seraphine's voice was low. And I wanted to see if I could make you look at me differently. Rowan's stomach twisted. You wanted to own my desire too. Seraphine's smile sharpened. Desire is easy. Fear is easy. Love is interesting. Rowan's chest tightened. I love Leora. Seraphine's eyes darkened. I know. Rowan's voice was raw. And you used me anyway. Seraphine stepped closer until her face was inches from his. Of course I did, she whispered. You are mine. Rowan's breath came ragged. He hated the way his body reacted to her closeness, hated the way the bond hummed as if approving. Seraphine's gaze flicked to his lips briefly, then back to his eyes. You will fight for me now, she said softly. You will carry my will into the world. And in return, I will keep your precious Leora alive. Rowan's jaw clenched. Alive isn't enough. Seraphine's eyes gleamed. Be careful, Rowan. Demanding more is how humans get hurt. Rowan's hands trembled. Where is she? Seraphine's smile was faint. In the east wing. Rowan's heart lurched. Let me see her. Seraphine's gaze sharpened. No. Rowan's chest tightened. Why? The western villages lay under a sky the color of bruises. Rowan rode with 4 night court soldiers, silent figures in black armor, their horses moving like shadows. Malrek did not accompany them. Instead, he had given Rowan a sealed order and a single warning. Do not hesitate. Mercy confuses men. Confused men become martyrs. Rowan's stomach churned. They reached the village of Hollowcrest near midnight. It was nestled in a valley, lanterns glowing faintly in windows. The air smelled of damp earth and smoke. Rowan dismounted and approached the village square. The night court soldiers remained behind, watching. A man stepped out from the shadows, human, wrapped in a cloak, face lined with fear and defiance. Rowan Vale, the man said. We heard you were dead. Rowan recognized him. Tomas, a former soldier who had deserted after seeing the night court's power. Tomas had once been Rowan's comrade. Rowan's throat tightened. I'm not dead. Tomas's gaze flicked to the night court sigil. His eyes widened. You swore to her. Rowan's jaw clenched. I didn't come to discuss my choices. Tomas's voice was bitter. Then why did you come? To kill us. Rowan's hands clenched. I came to stop you. Tomas laughed harshly. Stop us from what? Talking? Rowan swallowed. From gathering support. From stirring rebellion. Tomas's eyes flashed. Rebellion is what your precious queen fears. Rowan's chest tightened. Don't call her that. Tomas's gaze sharpened, mocking. What? Because she kissed you too? Rowan froze. His stomach dropped. How do you know? Tomas's smile was grim. We hear things. The night court thinks fear keeps secrets quiet. But fear makes people whisper. Rowan's throat tightened. What do you want? Tomas stepped closer, lowering his voice. We want what Aurelia wanted. A court that doesn't feed on fear. A treaty that isn't built on threats. A queen who doesn't bind men with blood like livestock. Rowan's chest ached. Tomas continued, eyes intense. And we want Leora. Rowan stiffened. What? Tomas's gaze flicked toward the hills. Word spread she was taken. Word spread she carries Aurelia's blood. Rowan's stomach churned. That's not your concern. Tomas's voice rose slightly fierce. It is if she's the key. If she can undo Seraphine's rule. Rowan's hands trembled. You don't know what you're talking about. Tomas stepped closer, face hard. Then tell me, is she the light? Is she the chance? Rowan's throat tightened, the bond pulsing faintly at the thought of speaking too much. He forced his voice low. She's a woman. Not a banner. Tomas's expression softened slightly. Then help us protect her. Rowan's chest tightened painfully. This was the choice Seraphine wanted him to face. Obey, crush rebellion, prove loyalty. Or defy, risk everything, choose mercy. Rowan stared at Tomas, mind racing. If he helped them, he could undermine Seraphine's control. He could perhaps free Leora. He could perhaps redeem himself. But if Seraphine discovered it, she would kill them all, and Leora first. Rowan's hands clenched so hard his nails drew blood. Tomas watched him, voice quiet. You loved her. We all saw it. Don't let Seraphine turn you into her weapon. Rowan's breath shuddered. Behind him, the night court soldiers shifted slightly, sensing tension. Rowan swallowed hard. He thought of Leora's face when he'd said I don't know. The hurt in her eyes. He couldn't do it again. Rowan's voice came out low. Leave. Tomas blinked. What? Rowan's jaw clenched. Take your people. Leave Hollowcrest. Disband. Go south. Hide. Tomas stared, disbelief and relief flickering. You're letting us go. Rowan's voice was harsh. Don't make me regret it. Tomas swallowed hard, then nodded once. Thank you. Rowan stepped closer, lowering his voice even further. And Tomas, if you care about Leora, don't come for her. Not yet. You'll only get her killed. Tomas's face tightened with grim understanding. Then what do we do? Rowan's throat tightened. He didn't know. He said the only truth he could. Wait. Seraphine's voice was calm. Because you will weaken her. Rowan stared, confused. How? Seraphine's eyes glinted. Love makes humans soft. And softness gets them killed in my court. Rowan's throat tightened. She's not soft. Seraphine's smile was thin. We will see. She turned away, walking toward the far end of the training hall where a table held scrolls and sealed letters. Your first task, Seraphine said, picking up a parchment. There is unrest in the western villages. A faction still loyal to Aurelia's ideals is stirring. They whisper of mercy, of overthrow. Rowan's stomach twisted. You want me to kill them? Seraphine's gaze flicked to him, cold. I want you to stop them. Rowan swallowed hard. That could mean many things. Seraphine's smile sharpened. Yes, it could. Rowan's chest tightened. If I do this, if I serve you, you let Leora live? Seraphine's gaze was steady. Yes. Rowan's jaw clenched, hatred and desperation twisting inside him. He thought of Leora's words. Maybe your sister wasn't wrong. Rowan's voice came out quiet, almost broken. What if your sister wasn't wrong? Seraphine's eyes flashed, anger flaring. The torches seemed to flicker harder. She was wrong, Seraphine snapped. Then she took a slow breath, regaining control. Mercy is a luxury. Immortals cannot afford it. Rowan swallowed. Maybe you can. Seraphine's gaze sharpened, dangerous. The bond flared, pain blooming in Rowan's chest like fire. He gasped, dropping his sword again. Seraphine stepped closer, eyes cold. Do not plant Aurelia's poison in my house. Rowan gritted his teeth, breathing through pain. Seraphine's voice softened, almost intimate. You will go west tonight. You will do what needs to be done. And when you return, if you return obedient, you may see her. Rowan's breath shuddered. Seraphine leaned close, whispering in his ear. Prove your loyalty, Rowan Vale. Or I will prove my cruelty. Rowan stood trembling, pain fading into a deep ache. He picked up his sword, hands unsteady. And as Malrek approached to escort him, Rowan realized the true shape of Seraphine's game. She wasn't only testing love. She was trying to force him to become the kind of monster she believed all rulers must be. Tomas nodded slowly. Then he turned and vanished into the shadows. Rowan stood alone in the square for a moment, heart pounding. He had just disobeyed Seraphine. Not openly. Not enough for the bond to punish him. But enough to shift the game. He returned to the night court soldiers. "What happened?" one asked, voice flat. Rowan forced his expression calm. "Nothing. No rebels." The soldier's eyes narrowed slightly, but he didn't press. They rode back toward Vesperhold before dawn. As they approached the palace, the bond pulsed faintly, like a heartbeat. Rowan's stomach churned. He didn't know if Seraphine could sense his mercy. He didn't know if he'd just saved lives. Or delayed their deaths. When he entered the palace, Seraphine was waiting in the throne hall, as if she never slept. Her crimson eyes fixed on him immediately. "You returned," she said softly. Rowan bowed stiffly. "Yes." Seraphine's gaze lingered on his face, searching. "Did you stop the unrest?" she asked. Rowan's throat tightened. "Yes." Seraphine's smile was faint. "How?" Rowan swallowed. He chose his words carefully. "There was no fight. They scattered." Seraphine's eyes narrowed slightly, but she said nothing. Then she stood, descending from the dais. "Come," she said. "You may see her." Rowan's heart lurched. He followed Seraphine through corridors to the east wing. They stopped before a door guarded by 2 vampires. Seraphine gestured, and the guard stepped aside. Seraphine opened the door. Inside, Leora stood by a window, staring out at the black gardens. She looked pale, exhausted, but her chin remained lifted. When she turned and saw Rowan, her eyes widened. For a heartbeat they just stared at each other. Then Leora crossed the room quickly, stopping inches from him. Rowan's throat tightened. "Leora." Leora's hand slapped his chest, not hard but with enough force to make him flinch. "You disappeared," she whispered fiercely. Rowan swallowed. "I had to go." Leora's eyes glistened. "You promised you wouldn't." Rowan's chest ached. "I'm here." Leora stared at him, fury and relief tangling. Then she reached up and grabbed his collar, pulling him down slightly, and kissed him. The kiss was warm, urgent, imperfect. Rowan's breath caught. He kissed her back, desperate, as if trying to erase Seraphine's cold imprint. For a moment, the world narrowed to Leora's mouth, her hands, her warmth. Then Rowan felt it. The bond flared. Pain stabbed through his chest like a hot spike. Rowan gasped, pulling back abruptly. Leora's eyes widened. "Rowan?" Rowan staggered, clutching his chest. Seraphine watched from the doorway, expression calm, almost curious. "You see," Seraphine murmured. "Love makes you weak." Leora spun toward her, fury blazing. "You did this. You're hurting him because he kissed me." Seraphine's smile was thin. "No. I am reminding him who holds him." Leora's hands shook, anger trembling through her. "You monster." Seraphine's eyes flashed, but her voice remained calm. "And yet you stand in my palace. Protected by my law. Alive because of my restraint." Leora's voice cracked. "You call this restraint?" Seraphine stepped closer, gaze sharp. "If I lacked restraint, you would already be dead." Rowan forced himself upright, breathing hard, pain fading but leaving a deep ache. He looked at Seraphine, voice strained. "Let her go." Seraphine's eyes glinted. "No." Rowan's jaw clenched. "Then let me go." Seraphine's smile sharpened. "You swore." Rowan's hands trembled. He looked at Leora, her eyes wet with fury and fear. Rowan realized with cold clarity. His mercy in Hollowcrest had been a small rebellion. But the true rebellion was here, in this room, in the way he still reached for Leora despite chains. And Seraphine could feel it. The Queen's gaze lingered on Rowan's face, then on Leora's. "Rest," Seraphine said softly, voice almost gentle. "Both of you. Tomorrow we begin the lessons." Leora's eyes narrowed. "Lessons." Seraphine's smile was faint. "For you. For what you are becoming." Then she left, closing the door behind her with a finality that felt like a lock. Rowan and Leora stood trembling in the quiet room, the air heavy with love and danger. Leora's voice was barely a whisper. What are we going to do? Rowan swallowed hard, pain still throbbing in his chest. He looked into Leora's eyes and told her the only truth that mattered. We're going to survive, he whispered. And we're going to find a way to break her hold. Leora nodded, fierce and trembling. And in that moment Rowan realized. Love was not just a weakness. It was the only weapon he had left. The lessons began with blood. Seraphine did not bring Leora to a classroom or a library. She brought her to the crypts beneath Vesperhold, where the air tasted of stone and old secrets, where candles burned with blue flame and shadows clung like cobwebs. Rowan was ordered to accompany them. He walked beside Leora through the narrow passages, his hand hovering near hers but never touching, afraid the bond would punish him again, afraid to show Seraphine any more weakness. Leora's jaw was clenched, her eyes bright with fury and fear. But she walked steady, shoulders squared. Seraphine led them to a chamber carved deep into the earth. In the center stood a stone basin filled with dark liquid that smelled faintly of iron. Blood. Seraphine gestured toward the basin. Drink. Leora stared, disgust and defiance flashing. No. Seraphine's smile was thin. You drank my truth wine. You will drink this. Leora's voice shook with anger. I'm not a vampire. Seraphine's eyes gleamed. No. You are something worse. Rowan's chest tightened. Seraphine stepped closer, voice low. Aurelia's blood was not merely political. It was magic. Leora flinched. Magic? Seraphine's gaze sharpened. The old bloodline could command hunger, could quiet it, could bind immortals without chains. Rowan's stomach dropped. Seraphine continued, eyes burning. Aurelia's supporters did not follow her because she was kind. They followed because her blood compelled them. Leora stared, horrified. No, that's not. Seraphine's voice was cold. You think your light is pure. It is not. It is power. Rowan's chest tightened. This was the reversal, the thing he hadn't anticipated. Leora wasn't simply a symbol. She was a threat because she could control vampires. Seraphine stepped back, gesturing again. Drink. And awaken what sleeps in you. Leora's hands trembled. She looked at Rowan, eyes wide with terror. Rowan's throat tightened. The bond pulsed faintly, warning him not to interfere. But he couldn't remain silent. Rowan stepped forward, voice strained. Seraphine, don't do this. Pain flared immediately, sharp and punishing. Rowan gritted his teeth, refusing to fall. Seraphine's gaze snapped to him. You will be silent. Rowan's breath came ragged. She's human. Seraphine's smile was cruel. So was Aurelia once. Leora's voice trembled. Rowan. Rowan looked at her, desperate. He wanted to pull her away, to run, to fight. But the bond held him like a leash and the palace was a fortress. Leora turned back to the basin. Her jaw clenched. If I drink, she whispered, and I become what you fear, what then? Seraphine's eyes gleamed. Then I will decide whether you live. Leora's face hardened with fury. Then she stepped forward, scooped a handful of the dark liquid and drank. Rowan's heart lurched. For a moment nothing happened. Then Leora gasped. Her body arched as if struck. Her eyes widened, pupils dilating. The air in the chamber seemed to thicken, pressing against Rowan's skin. Leora's breath came fast, ragged. Her voice cut off as her gaze lifted to Seraphine. And then something impossible happened. Seraphine flinched. It was tiny, barely visible, but Rowan saw it. The queen, who never flinched, recoiled as if something had touched her soul. Leora's eyes glowed, not crimson but pale gold, like dawn seen through fog. Rowan's breath caught. Leora whispered, voice trembling but resonant, as if layered with another tone. Kneel. The word was soft. But it landed in the chamber like a command carved into bone. Seraphine's body stiffened. For a heartbeat she remained upright, eyes burning, fighting. Then, slowly, unwillingly, Seraphine's knees bent. The vampire queen sank to one knee before Leora. Rowan's mind shattered. Seraphine's face twisted with rage and shock. Her hands clenched into fists. Leora stared down at her, trembling, tears spilling as if she didn't understand what she'd done. Rowan's chest tightened with awe and terror. Leora's voice cracked. I didn't mean. Seraphine's eyes flared, struggling. Stop. Leora's breath hitched. She stumbled backward, shaking her head. I don't want this. I don't want to control you. Seraphine's body remained kneeling, forced. Her expression was fury and something deeper, fear. Rowan stared, realization crashing through him. Seraphine wasn't afraid of Aurelia's ideals. She was afraid of Aurelia's blood because it could dominate vampires, including Seraphine herself. Leora's eyes flicked to Rowan, terrified. Rowan, what did I do? Rowan swallowed hard, voice shaking. You commanded her. Leora's face crumpled. No, no. Seraphine's voice was a hiss, strained with resistance. Release me. Leora shook, breathing hard. Her eyes squeezed shut as if praying. Then she whispered, barely audible, rise. Seraphine's body jerked. Slowly she stood again as if dragged upright by invisible strings. The moment she was free, Seraphine lunged. Rowan moved instinctively, stepping between them, sword half drawn. The bond flared, pain-stabbing, but Rowan didn't care. Seraphine stopped inches from Rowan's blade, eyes blazing. You see? Seraphine hissed at Leora. You are dangerous. Leora's eyes were wide, horrified. I didn't want to. Seraphine's voice cut like a knife. Want does not matter. Rowan's voice was raw. You did this to her. Seraphine's gaze snapped to him, fury sharp. I revealed what was already inside her. Rowan's breath came ragged. Then she's not your prisoner. She's your rival. Seraphine's eyes narrowed. Leora's voice trembled. Rival? I don't want your throne. Seraphine's smile was cold. It doesn't matter what you want. Others will want it through you. Rowan's stomach churned. Seraphine turned abruptly, striding toward the crypt chamber's exit. Enough. We return. Leora stood trembling, staring at her own hands as if they were stained. Rowan stepped closer to Leora, voice low. Look at me. Leora's eyes lifted, wet and terrified. Rowan's chest ached. He wanted to promise her everything would be fine. But he couldn't lie. He said softly, whatever you are, you're still you. Leora's voice cracked. Am I? Rowan's throat tightened. He didn't know. As they followed Seraphine back through the crypt corridors, Rowan understood the true shift in the story. Leora was not just someone to be protected. She was a force. And Seraphine's obsession with her was not only fear. It was the terror of being controlled, and the longing to be freed from hunger. Because for one heartbeat, when Seraphine knelt, Rowan had seen something in the Queen's face that looked like relief. And that was the most dangerous truth of all. After the crypts, nothing felt stable. The palace corridors seemed narrower. The air seemed heavier. Even the candles looked like they were watching. Leora was kept in her rooms, guarded more tightly now. Rowan was kept busy, sent on errands, forced into drills, dragged into meetings where vampire nobles discussed border patrols and tribute with bored cruelty. Seraphine did not speak of what happened in the crypts. That silence was not forgiveness. It was calculation. Rowan saw it in the way she watched Leora now, like a scientist watching a volatile experiment. He saw it in the way she kept Rowan close, never letting him out of her reach. And Rowan felt it in the bond. It had changed. Before, it had been a leash that tightened when he defied. Now it hummed constantly, as if aware of Leora's awakening, as if reacting to the possibility that someone else might hold Rowan's strings. One night, Rowan was summoned again to Seraphine's private chamber. He entered with his jaw clenched, bracing for punishment. But Seraphine was not alone. A vampire noble stood near the hearth, a woman with platinum hair and eyes like ice. Her gown was white, too bright for Vesperhold's darkness. Seraphine sat in a chair, posture relaxed but eyes sharp. Rowan, she said softly. Meet Lady Isolde. Isolde's gaze slid over Rowan like a knife. So this is the human pet. Rowan's hands clenched. Seraphine's smile was faint. Be polite. Isolde's lips curved. Of course. I have come with an offer. Rowan frowned. An offer. Isolde stepped closer, voice smooth. You are bound to Seraphine, yes? Her sworn knight. Rowan's jaw tightened. Yes. Isolde's smile sharpened. Then you are valuable. Rowan's stomach twisted. Isolde continued, eyes gleaming. There are those in the court who believe Seraphine's rule has become unstable. Rowan's pulse hammered. He glanced at Seraphine, expecting fury. Seraphine's expression remained calm, almost amused, as if she wanted to see where this went. Isolde's voice lowered. Aurelia's blood has resurfaced. The court whispers. Some see opportunity. Rowan's throat tightened. Isolde stepped closer, eyes bright. We could remove Seraphine. Rowan froze. Isolde's gaze flicked to Seraphine, then back to Rowan. And we could place Aurelia's vessel on the throne. Rowan's stomach churned. Leora is not a vessel. Isolde's smile was thin. Call her what you like. She is power. Rowan's hands trembled. And what would happen to her? Isolde's eyes gleamed. She would rule. Under guidance, of course. Rowan's stomach turned. You'd use her. Isolde tilted her head. Is Seraphine not already using her? Rowan's chest tightened. Isolde stepped closer, voice soft, seductive. Join us, Rowan. You stand close to Seraphine. You could open doors. You could deliver her to us. Rowan's throat tightened, the bond pulsing sharply at the betrayal implied. Pain flickered behind his ribs. Rowan clenched his jaw. No. Isolde's brows lifted. No. Rowan's voice was low, fierce. You will not touch Leora. Isolde's smile hardened. Then you choose Seraphine. Rowan's gaze flicked to Seraphine. The queen watched him, expression unreadable. Rowan's voice came out rough. I choose Leora. That's all. Isolde's eyes narrowed. How noble. Seraphine finally spoke, voice quiet. Leave us, Isolde. Isolde's gaze lingered on Rowan, cold and promising. This will not be the last time you are asked to choose. Then she glided out, leaving the room colder in her wake. Rowan turned toward Seraphine, anger and dread tightening his chest. You knew she would say that. Seraphine's smile was faint. Yes. Rowan's jaw clenched. Why let her? Seraphine leaned back, studying him. Because now I know something. Rowan's stomach twisted. What? Seraphine's eyes gleamed. That you will not betray Leora for power. Rowan's voice cracked. I would never. Seraphine's smile was thin. Good. Because others will try. Rowan's chest tightened. Then let her go. Take her out of this. Seraphine's gaze sharpened. And send her into the world untrained? Unaware of what she can do? She would die. Rowan swallowed. Or she'd live free. Seraphine's expression hardened. Freedom is a story humans tell themselves to feel brave. Rowan's hands clenched. What do you want from her? Seraphine's eyes darkened. For a moment her composure slipped. I want to know, she whispered, if she can do what Aurelia promised. Rowan's throat tightened. Which is? Seraphine's voice was low, almost reluctant. To end hunger. Rowan stared, stunned. Seraphine's gaze flicked away as if ashamed to admit it. You think I enjoy feeding? She murmured. You think I enjoy the constant restraint, the constant calculation? You think I enjoy the taste of fear in every human vein? Rowan's chest tightened. He didn't know what to say. Seraphine looked back at him, eyes burning. Aurelia believed she could change us. She believed her blood could quiet the hunger in all vampires, make us something else. Rowan swallowed. And you killed her. Seraphine's jaw tightened. Because she would have destroyed the court. Rowan's voice was raw. Or saved it. Seraphine's eyes flashed. Saved it into weakness. Rowan stepped closer, voice low. Or saved it into peace. The bond pulsed, pain flickering. Seraphine's smile sharpened. You're still trying to plant her ideals in me. Rowan's breath came ragged. I'm trying to keep you from killing her because you're afraid of hope. Seraphine's gaze went still. Then she stood, moving close, so close Rowan could feel her cold radiating. Her voice dropped to a whisper. If Leora can end hunger, then what am I? Rowan's throat tightened. Seraphine's eyes looked almost desperate for a heartbeat. A queen built on hunger. A monster who justified every cruelty as necessity. Rowan swallowed hard. You'd be a woman who can choose differently. Seraphine's eyes flared. She grabbed Rowan's wrist, not painfully this time but firmly. And if she cannot end hunger? Rowan's chest tightened. Then you'll kill her. Seraphine's smile was thin. Then I will kill her. Rowan's throat burned. And me too. Seraphine's gaze held his. Perhaps. Rowan stared at her, trembling. Seraphine released him, stepping back, regaining her mask. Bring Leora to the mirror hall tomorrow, she said. We will test what she can do. Rowan's chest tightened with dread. Seraphine's voice softened, almost intimate. And Rowan, if you truly love her, Rowan swallowed. Yes. Seraphine's eyes gleamed. Pray she is strong enough to survive being the court's hope. Rowan's breath shuddered. Because he realized, the threat wasn't just Seraphine anymore. It was the entire night court, circling Leora like wolves around a flame. The mirror hall was a cathedral of reflections. Tall mirrors lined the walls from floor to ceiling, framed in black iron shaped like thorn vines. Candles floated in sconces, their flames multiplying infinitely in glass until the room seemed filled with 1,000 tiny fires. Rowan hated this place immediately. Mirrors showed too much. They revealed the tiredness in his eyes, the tension in his jaw, the night court sigil gleaming at his throat like a scar. They revealed how small he was in this palace's endless darkness. They also revealed Seraphine. She stood at the center of the hall in a black gown, her hair braided back, her crimson eyes bright. She looked flawless in every reflection, every angle a queen, every shadow obedient. Leora stood opposite her, wearing a simple dress the servants had provided, deep green velvet, not quite regal but not quite humble either. Her hair was loose. Her face was pale but her eyes were steady. Rowan stood near the wall, forced into the role of witness again. Seraphine gestured toward the mirrors. This hall is old, she said softly. Older than my reign. It holds memories. Leora's brow furrowed. Why bring me here? Seraphine's gaze was intent. Because Aurelia's bloodline did not simply command vampires. It shaped perception. It could force the hungry to see themselves as they truly were. Leora swallowed hard. You mean guilt? Seraphine's smile was thin. If you prefer. She stepped closer, stopping before the largest mirror, a towering pane that reflected them in crisp detail. Look, Seraphine commanded. Leora hesitated, then faced the mirror. At first she saw only herself, pale, tired, determined. Then the glass shimmered. Rowan's breath caught. The reflection changed. Leora's eyes in the mirror glowed pale gold. Her skin looked luminous, almost otherworldly. And behind her reflection, faint as mist, stood another figure, a woman with hair like night, eyes like dawn. Aurelia. Rowan's stomach dropped. Leora stared, trembling. That's. Seraphine's voice was quiet. Her. Leora's breath hitched. Tears formed. Why is she there? Seraphine's gaze sharpened. Because blood remembers. Rowan's chest tightened. Leora lifted a trembling hand toward the mirror. Her fingertips hovered just above the glass. In the reflection, Aurelia's hand lifted too, mirroring her. Leora whispered, voice cracked. I don't want this. Seraphine's smile was faint. It doesn't matter. Leora's hand touched the glass. The mirror flared with light. Rowan staggered back instinctively, shielding his eyes. When he looked again, the hall had changed. The mirrors no longer reflected the present. They reflected scenes, memories perhaps, or visions. Rowan saw a village burning, his village, his mother screaming. He saw himself as a boy, kneeling in ash, clutching the silver charm. He saw Leora standing at the well in Briar Hollow, soot on her cheek, steady eyes. He saw Seraphine, young, almost human-looking, standing in this very hall with a woman beside her. Aurelia. Aurelia's eyes were pale gold, like Leora's had been in the crypt. Leora's voice was quiet. Let me try. Seraphine's jaw clenched. Try what? Leora's eyes glistened. To quiet it. The hunger. Rowan's heart lurched. Seraphine stared at Leora's hand on her wrist. For a moment the queen looked uncertain. Then she laughed softly, bitter. You think you can cure me? Leora's voice trembled. I don't know. But I want to. Seraphine's gaze sharpened. And if you fail? Leora swallowed. Then you kill me. Seraphine's smile was thin. Yes. Leora nodded once, fierce. Then let's do it. Rowan's breath caught. He watched Seraphine's eyes, watched the queen weigh fear against longing. Finally, Seraphine whispered, almost to herself, Aurelia? Then she nodded. Very well, Seraphine said softly. Try. Leora closed her eyes, her hand still on Seraphine's wrist. The pale gold glow in Leora's eyes intensified, seeping through her lashes. The mirrors shimmered. Rowan felt the air shift as if the hall itself held its breath. Seraphine's body tensed, jaw clenched as if resisting instinct. Leora's voice was barely audible. Quiet, she whispered, not a command but a plea. For a moment nothing happened. Then Seraphine exhaled sharply as if something inside her loosened. Her eyes, always crimson, always burning, dimmed slightly. Rowan's heart pounded. Seraphine's expression flickered. Surprise, confusion, something like relief. Then the hunger returned like a wave. Seraphine's eyes flared crimson again, brighter than before. She jerked her wrist away, stepping back as if burned. Enough, she snapped. Leora stumbled, panting, drained. Rowan's chest tightened. Did it work? Seraphine stared at Leora, breathing hard, an unusual sight for a vampire queen. For a heartbeat, her voice was almost shaken. For one moment, she whispered, it was quiet. Rowan's breath caught. Seraphine's gaze hardened immediately after, as if ashamed. And that, she said coldly, is why you must stay under my control. Leora's eyes widened, exhausted. No. Seraphine's voice cut sharper. Yes. Rowan's hands clenched. Seraphine turned away, cloak flaring like shadow. Take her back to her rooms, she ordered the guards who had appeared at the hall's edge. And Rowan, come. Rowan's stomach dropped. He looked at Leora, her face pale, eyes still faintly glowing, sweat on her brow. Leora's voice was barely a whisper. Don't leave me. Rowan's chest ached. He stepped close, lowering his voice. I'm here, he whispered. Even when I'm not. Leora's eyes glistened. Then the guards took her, and Rowan followed Seraphine into the corridors, heart pounding. Because now the queen had felt a moment without hunger. And Rowan knew, with cold certainty, what that would do to a creature who had ruled by hunger for centuries. It would make her crave freedom, and hate the one who offered it. The two sisters faced each other in the mirror hall, tension thick as smoke. You can't keep feeding like this, Aurelia's reflection said, voice echoing through the hall like a ghost. You can't keep ruling with fear. Seraphine's reflection sneered. And you think love will save us? Aurelia's reflection stepped closer. I think we can change. Seraphine's reflection laughed bitterly. You want to chain hunger with mercy. You want to make monsters into saints. Aurelia's reflection's eyes softened. I want to make us into something that doesn't need to kill. Rowan's throat tightened. In the present, Seraphine stood watching her own memory, face hard as stone. Leora stared at the reflections, trembling. You argued like this. Seraphine's voice was cold. Yes. The memory shifted. Rowan watched as Aurelia touched Seraphine's cheek, gentle. You're not cruel, Aurelia whispered in the reflection. You're afraid. Seraphine's reflection's eyes flashed. Stop. Aurelia's reflection smiled sadly. Let me help you. Seraphine's reflection grabbed Aurelia's wrist, twisting, fury, fear. The memory blurred, then snapped to another scene. A stone altar, blood dripping, Aurelia bound. Seraphine stood over her with a dagger. Rowan's stomach turned. Leora gasped, hand flying to her mouth. No. Seraphine's expression in the present did not change, but her eyes burned brighter. Aurelia's reflection looked up at Seraphine, tears in her pale gold eyes. If you kill me, Aurelia whispered, you will never forgive yourself. Seraphine's reflection's jaw clenched. I don't need forgiveness. Aurelia's reflection smiled faintly, tragic. Yes, you do. Then the dagger fell. Leora sobbed, stumbling back. Stop, stop. The mirror flared again and the memory shattered into fragments. Leora sank to her knees, shaking, tears streaming. Rowan's chest ached. He moved instinctively toward her, but Seraphine's hand lifted, stopping him without touch. No, Seraphine said softly. Let her see. Leora looked up at Seraphine, eyes blazing through tears. You murdered her. Seraphine's gaze was cold. I ended a threat. Leora's voice cracked. She was your sister. Seraphine's eyes flashed. She was my rival. Leora's hands trembled. And now you want to use me to fix what you broke. Seraphine's smile was thin. I want to know if what she promised was a lie. Leora's voice rose raw. You don't get to decide that. You don't get to kill her and then demand her miracle back. Seraphine's eyes flared, anger sharp. Be careful. Leora stood, trembling but fierce. Her eyes glowed faintly gold now, the light leaking through her like a crack in darkness. Rowan's breath caught. Leora stepped closer to Seraphine, voice low. You're terrified. Seraphine's jaw tightened. Of what? Leora's gaze held hers. Of being forgiven. The word struck the hall like a bell. Seraphine froze. Rowan's chest tightened. He saw it, the way Seraphine's composure faltered just for a heartbeat. Leora's voice softened, trembling with rage and grief. If Aurelia's blood can end hunger, if it can make vampires choose not to kill, then you'll have to live with what you did. Seraphine's eyes flashed crimson, fury and pain tangled. You think you can judge me? Seraphine hissed. Leora's voice broke. I think you judge yourself every night. Silence. The mirrors flickered, reflecting endless versions of Seraphine. Some cold, some furious, some strangely weary. Rowan's breath came ragged. Seraphine stepped closer to Leora, eyes burning. Do you know what hunger is? She whispered. Do you know what it is to feel your own nature clawing at you every second? To feel the world's pulse and know you could end it with one bite. Leora swallowed hard, eyes still glowing faintly. No. Seraphine's smile was bitter. Then do not speak of forgiveness. Leora's gaze softened slightly. Maybe that's why I should. Seraphine's eyes flared. The air in the hall thickened again, pressure building. Rowan felt the bond hum reacting. Leora lifted her hands slowly, not in command this time, but in offering. She touched Seraphine's wrist gently. Seraphine stiffened. Seraphine brought Rowan back to her private chamber, but the room felt different now. Not because the decor had changed, velvet, candles, black silk, blue flame, but because something in Seraphine had shifted. She paced near the hearth like a caged predator. Rowan stood near the door, tense, watching her. Seraphine's voice was quiet when she finally spoke. You saw it. Rowan swallowed. Yes. Seraphine's eyes flashed. For one heartbeat, it was silent. Rowan's chest tightened. You want it again. Seraphine's smile was bitter. Of course I do. Rowan stepped closer cautiously. Then let her help you. Seraphine's gaze snapped to him, sharp. And let her control me? Rowan's throat tightened. She didn't command you. She tried to soothe you. Seraphine's eyes burned. Soothe. She spat the word like poison. As if I am a beast to be calmed. Rowan's voice was low. Aren't you tired of being hungry? Seraphine froze. The question hung in the air like a blade. Seraphine's voice came out quiet, raw. Yes. Rowan's chest tightened. Seraphine turned toward him slowly. Her crimson eyes looked brighter in the candlelight, but now Rowan could see something else behind them. Fear that wasn't about death, but about change. I built my court on hunger, Seraphine whispered. I made it law. I made it ritual. I made cruelty into necessity. Rowan swallowed. You made it survivable. Seraphine's smile was thin. I made it obedient. Rowan stepped closer. And now you don't know what you are without it. Seraphine's gaze sharpened, but she didn't deny it. Rowan's voice softened. That moment, when it was quiet, what did it feel like? Seraphine's throat worked. For a moment, she looked away as if ashamed to answer. Then she whispered, like, peace. Rowan's breath caught. Seraphine's eyes snapped back to him, fierce. And it terrified me. Rowan's voice was quiet. Because peace means you have to face what you did. Seraphine's jaw tightened. Rowan continued, voice raw. Because hunger gave you an excuse. But peace would leave you with only yourself. Seraphine's eyes flared crimson. The bond pulsed sharply, warning. Rowan flinched, but he forced himself to hold her gaze. Seraphine stepped closer, so close Rowan could feel her cold, smell roses and iron. You think you understand me? She whispered. Rowan swallowed. I'm trying. Seraphine's smile was cruel. You're trying to save me. Rowan's chest tightened. Maybe. Seraphine's eyes flashed. You will fail. Rowan's voice was low. Maybe. But Leora might succeed. Seraphine's expression twisted, anger and longing tangled. She is not your savior, Seraphine hissed. She is your weakness. Rowan's hands clenched. And you're afraid she'll become your weakness too. Seraphine froze. The silence sharpened. Rowan realized he'd hit something true. Seraphine's voice came out quiet, dangerous. Do you know what Aurelia did to me before I killed her? Rowan swallowed. No. Seraphine's eyes burned. She looked at me the way Leora looked at me today. Like she believed she could help. Rowan's chest tightened. Seraphine's smile was bitter. And for a moment, I wanted to let her. Rowan's breath caught. Seraphine stepped even closer. Then I remembered what mercy costs. Rowan's voice shook. What did it cost you? Seraphine's gaze flashed, fury sharp. Everything. Rowan stared at her, heart pounding. Seraphine's hand lifted, touching Rowan's cheek. Not gently, not cruelly. Just thoughtfully. Her fingers were cold. You love her, Seraphine murmured. Would you let her die to save me? Rowan's stomach dropped. No. Seraphine's smile sharpened. Good. Rowan's voice was raw. Would you let me die to save your throne? Seraphine's eyes narrowed. Perhaps. Rowan swallowed hard. Would you let her die to save your hunger? Seraphine's gaze went very still. For a long moment she didn't answer. Then she whispered almost reluctantly, yes. Rowan's chest tightened with fury and despair. Then you're still a monster. Seraphine's eyes flashed and suddenly she grabbed Rowan's throat, not choking but holding him in place, forcing him close. Her voice was a hiss. Yes. Rowan's pulse thundered. He stared into her eyes, seeing hunger, seeing fear, seeing centuries of pain twisted into power. Seraphine's grip tightened slightly. And you are still mine. Rowan's voice came out strained. Only because you chained me. Seraphine's smile was cruel. Chains reveal what people really are. Rowan's breath came ragged. Then what am I? Seraphine leaned close, lips near his ear. A man who will do anything for love. Rowan swallowed hard, pain and truth twisting. Seraphine released his throat abruptly, stepping back. You will sleep in my chamber tonight, she said calmly, as if nothing had happened. I want you close. Rowan's stomach twisted. Why? Seraphine's gaze was cold. Because I do not trust you. Rowan's laugh was bitter. And I don't trust you. Seraphine's smile was thin. Good. She gestured toward the bed. Rest. Rowan stood trembling, fury and fear and longing tangled. He thought of Leora alone in her guarded room, exhausted from trying to quiet hunger that wasn't hers. He thought of Seraphine pacing like a starving wolf who had tasted peace. Rowan lay on the edge of the bed, fully clothed, staring at the ceiling. Seraphine lay on the other side, motionless, eyes open. For a long time neither spoke. Then, in the darkness, Seraphine whispered, so quietly Rowan almost thought he imagined it. If she can end hunger, will you still love her? Rowan's throat tightened. He whispered back, yes. Silence. Then Seraphine whispered again, voice barely audible. And will you still fear me? Rowan's chest ached. He didn't answer. Because the truth was too complicated. Because fear was not the only thing he felt anymore. The coup began with a whisper. Rowan heard it in the corridors. Servants flinching, guards exchanging glances, vampire nobles lingering too close to doors, their smiles too sharp. By the third night after the mirror hall, Rowan knew something was coming. Seraphine knew too. He could see it in the way she grew more restless, more controlled, as if clenching herself into place. Leora was brought to more lessons. Sometimes in crypts, sometimes in halls lined with old sigils. Each time she returned pale and exhausted, her eyes faintly glowing gold as if the light inside her was burning through flesh. Rowan saw her only briefly, moments in corridors, glances exchanged across guarded thresholds. But those moments kept him alive. One evening, as Rowan stood watch outside Seraphine's chamber, Malrek approached silently. Sir Rowan, Malrek murmured. Rowan's jaw tightened. What? Malrek's gaze was cool. There will be an attempt tonight. Rowan's stomach dropped. An attempt? Malrek's lips curved faintly. On the Queen. Rowan's pulse hammered. You're telling me this? Malrek's expression was unreadable. I am loyal to the throne. Not to instability. Rowan's hands clenched. Who? Malrek shrugged slightly. Lady Isolde leads it. Others will follow. Rowan's stomach churned. Why tell me? Malrek's eyes narrowed. Because you are the Queen's leash. And because the girl may be used. Rowan's blood ran cold. Used how? Malrek's voice was quiet. As a weapon. As a banner. As a chain. Choose your word. Rowan's chest tightened. Where is Leora now? Malrek's gaze flicked toward the east wing. In her rooms. Rowan's throat tightened. Then I need to. Malrek stepped closer, voice low. If you move openly, the coup begins sooner. Be careful. Rowan stared at him, suspicion and desperate gratitude tangled. Why are you helping? Malrek's smile was faint, almost amused. Because I have watched Seraphine for centuries. She does not change often. Rowan's stomach twisted. Malrek continued, voice soft. But she has changed since you arrived. Rowan's chest tightened. Malrek's eyes gleamed. Change makes courts bleed. Then Malrek turned and vanished into the shadows like smoke. Rowan stood trembling, mind racing. If Isolde attempted to overthrow Seraphine, chaos would erupt. Leora would be seized, either killed as a threat or enthroned as a puppet. Rowan could not let that happen. But how? The bond tied him to Seraphine. It punished defiance. It compelled obedience. Yet Rowan had already learned something. The bond responded to intent. He could maneuver within its rules if he was careful. Rowan made his decision quickly. He moved through the palace quietly, slipping into the east wing before guards could question him. Leora's door was guarded by 2 vampires. Rowan approached, posture calm. The guards stiffened. Sir Rowan. Rowan held their gaze. The queen wants her brought to the inner hall. Now. The guards hesitated. Rowan's stomach clenched. If they refused, he'd have to force them, and the bond would punish any harm against Seraphine's servants. He kept his voice steady. There is danger tonight. The guards exchanged a glance. Then one nodded slowly. We will escort. Rowan exhaled. They opened the door. Leora stood inside, already dressed as if she hadn't slept. Her eyes widened when she saw Rowan. Rowan? She whispered. Rowan stepped inside quickly, lowering his voice. We need to move. Now. Leora's brows knit. Why? Rowan's throat tightened. There's a coup. Leora's face went pale. Against Seraphine? Rowan nodded. Leora's jaw clenched. So they'll come for me? Rowan swallowed. Yes. Leora's eyes burned. Then we run. Rowan's chest tightened. We can't run from this palace tonight. Leora's voice was fierce. Then we fight. Rowan stared at her, heart pounding. We need Seraphine alive long enough to keep you from being used. Leora's gaze sharpened. You're protecting her now? Rowan's throat tightened. I'm protecting you. And right now that means stopping Isolde. Leora swallowed hard, conflict flickering, then she nodded. Tell me what to do. Rowan's pulse hammered. He turned toward the guards. Take her to the inner hall. Keep her close. No one touches her without my word. The guards nodded, moving to flank Leora. Leora stepped closer to Rowan, lowering her voice. Are you going to warn Seraphine? Rowan swallowed. I have to. Leora's eyes glistened. Be careful. She'll think you're part of it. Rowan's chest tightened. I know. Rowan hurried back toward Seraphine's chamber. He found the door open. Inside, the room was dim, lit only by blue hearth flame and candles. Seraphine stood near the window, looking out at the black gardens as if she'd been expecting him. You move like a man with fear in his mouth, she said softly without turning. Rowan's throat tightened. There's an attempt tonight. Isolde. Seraphine turned slowly, crimson eyes calm. I know, she said. Rowan froze. Then why? Seraphine's smile was faint. Because I wanted to see who would choose me. Rowan's stomach churned. This is a test? Seraphine's gaze sharpened. Everything is. Rowan's voice cracked with anger. People will die. Seraphine's expression did not change. Yes. Rowan's hands clenched. Leora will be taken. Seraphine's eyes flashed. Not if you obey. Rowan swallowed hard. I moved her already. She's guarded. Seraphine's brows lifted slightly, surprise. Then her smile returned, slow and knowing. You are becoming useful, she murmured. Rowan's voice was raw. I'm not doing this for you. Seraphine stepped closer. No, she whispered. You're doing it because you cannot bear the idea of losing her. Rowan's jaw clenched. Seraphine's gaze held his. And that is why you will win. Before Rowan could respond, a scream echoed through the palace. Then another. The coup had begun. Seraphine's eyes gleamed. "Come," she said softly. "Let us see who dares bleed my court." Rowan's heart pounded as he followed her out. The corridors were chaos now, guards rushing, nobles shouting, shadows moving too fast. They reached the inner hall. Leora stood at the center, surrounded by Rowan's guards, her eyes glowing faintly gold. Across the hall, Lady Isolde stepped forward with a group of armed vampires behind her. Isolde's smile was cold. "Queen Seraphine," she said smoothly, "your reign ends tonight." Seraphine's smile was faint. "How dramatic." Isolde's gaze flicked to Leora. "And the new dawn begins." Leora stiffened. Rowan stepped forward instinctively, placing himself slightly in front of Leora. Seraphine's voice was calm, almost amused. "You plan to use my sister's blood against me." Isolde's eyes gleamed. "Not against you. To replace you." Seraphine's smile sharpened. "You assume she will obey you." Isolde's gaze slid to Leora, voice soft and persuasive. "Aurelia's heir. You don't belong in chains. Come, take the throne. And the hunger. Be what she was meant to be." Leora's breath came ragged. Her eyes flicked to Rowan, then to Seraphine. Rowan's throat tightened. Seraphine's gaze locked on Leora. "Choose," she said softly. The word choice again, always choice, always a knife. Leora's hands trembled. Isolde stepped closer. "Come to me," she coaxed, "and I will free you from her." Rowan's chest ached. Leora's voice came out shaking. "I don't want your throne." Isolde's smile faltered slightly. "You will take it anyway." Seraphine's eyes flared. "Enough." The air thickened with power. Isolde's guards moved forward. Steel flashed. Vampire speed turned the hall into a blur of violence. Rowan drew his sword, heart pounding. He fought, not for Seraphine, not for Isolde, but for the space around Leora. He parried a blade aimed at her throat. He shoved a vampire back, feeling the bond pulse but not punish, because this was defense of the queen's property perhaps, or defense of the court. Leora stood trembling in the center, eyes glowing brighter as if panic fed the light. Isolde pushed through the chaos, reaching toward Leora. "Now," Isolde hissed, "command her." Leora's breath hitched. Her eyes flashed gold. Seraphine lunged toward her at the same time, teeth bared. Rowan's chest tightened with terror. Leora raised her hand. Rowan expected her to command Seraphine to kneel again. Instead, Leora cried out, voice raw. "Stop." The word slammed through the hall like a shockwave. Every vampire froze. Swords halted mid-swing. Bodies locked in place. Even Seraphine stopped, eyes wide as if pulled by invisible chains. Rowan stood frozen too, not by magic but by shock. Leora's voice trembled, tears streaming. "I won't be your weapon." The pressure in the air intensified, holding everyone still. Leora's eyes burned gold. "None of you will touch anyone else." The command was not directed at one person. It was directed at hunger itself. Rowan's breath caught. Seraphine's face twisted with fury and something else, fear, awe. Isolde trembled, struggling against the invisible restraint. "You can't." Leora's voice was a whisper now, shaking. "Yes, I can." The hall held stillness like a held breath. Rowan stared at Leora, realizing the truth. She wasn't just commanding vampires. She was commanding the violence inside them. She was doing what Aurelia promised. And that meant she could change the world. Or break it. The silence Leora commanded did not feel peaceful. It felt like the universe holding a knife over its own throat. Every vampire stood frozen, eyes wide, muscles locked, blades suspended in mid-arc, torches flickered soundlessly. Even the air seemed too thick to move through without permission. The only sound was Leora's breathing, shallow and shaking, as if she were afraid that one wrong inhale would shatter the spell and spill blood all over the marble. Rowan stood close enough to feel her trembling through the space between them. His sword was still raised, but the point dipped slightly as his arm began to tire. The hall's reflections, polished stone, black glass, silver inlays, caught Leora's pale gold light and fractured it into 100 shards. She looked like a holy thing in the middle of a slaughter. Seraphine's crimson gaze stayed pinned to Leora like a starved animal's stare. Rage, fear, awe, those things weren't separate on her face. They were braided together, tight enough to cut. Isolde's lips peeled back. She fought the stillness with pure will, her body trembling in tiny spasms. "You don't belong to her," she rasped, voice strangled by the force holding her. "You belong to the future." Leora's eyes glistened, gold light pooled at the corners like tears made of dawn. Her voice came out thin, cracking. I don't belong to anyone. Rowan lowered his sword slowly, careful, as if movement itself might be interpreted as violence and punished. He leaned closer, just enough to let his voice reach her without becoming a declaration to the whole room. Leora, he whispered. Breathe. She blinked as if remembering her lungs existed. Her shoulders rose, fell. The gold in her eyes flared brighter with the inhale, then softened slightly with the exhale. Seraphine spoke then, quiet, controlled, and frightening in the way a calm sea is frightening when you know what it can do. Release them, Seraphine said. Not as a request. Leora flinched. Her gaze flicked to the vampire queen. If I do, they'll kill each other. Isolde's eyes flashed. Or we'll free you. Seraphine's mouth curved. You cannot hold an entire court still forever, little light. Leora's jaw tightened. I don't want to hold anyone. Yet you are, Seraphine replied. Rowan watched Leora's hands, fingers curled slightly, trembling like they were holding invisible strings. He realized she wasn't controlling bodies like puppets. She was holding back the decision inside them. She was gripping the part of them that lunged and fed and tore. Rowan's stomach turned at the thought of what it cost her. Leora, Rowan murmured again, forcing steadiness into his voice, do it in pieces. Let the guard step back. Let the blades lower. Make them choose stillness instead of forcing it. Her eyes widened, understanding and fear colliding. I don't know how. Try, he said. Like you tried with her. Leora swallowed hard and turned her face slightly toward the nearest ring of vampires, guards, nobles, rebels all mixed together in the stalled violence. Her voice came out shaking, but it carried. Lower your weapons, she whispered. A twitch ran through the room. Steel sank, millimeter by millimeter, as if gravity itself had been waiting for permission. Several vampires gasped as their arms finally obeyed. The air's pressure eased slightly. Isolde snarled. Don't listen. Leora's gaze snapped to her. The gold intensified. Isolde's mouth clamped shut mid-word. She trembled, hatred vibrating beneath her skin like a trapped insect. Rowan felt the bond in his own chest tighten, reacting to Seraphine's proximity, reacting to the new power in the room. It wasn't pain, not yet. It was alertness, like a chain hearing another chain rattle nearby. Seraphine took one slow step forward. She was careful not to move like an attack. Her eyes never left Leora's. You are exhausting yourself, Seraphine said softly. I can smell it. Your heart is racing. Your blood is burning. Leora's lips parted. Then stop making me do this. Seraphine's voice stayed calm. This is not me. This is what you are. Leora's hands shook harder. I don't want to be a throne. I don't want to be your sister. I don't want to be. Her breath hitched and the stillness wavered. Somewhere in the hall, a blade lifted half an inch, an instinct returning. Rowan stepped closer, putting himself between Leora and the closest rebel vampire without making it obvious. Look at me, he whispered. Leora's eyes met his, wide and terrified. Rowan forced his voice to stay gentle. You're here. You're not in the mirror hall. You're not on an altar. You're here. With me. Her breath steadied just a fraction. Seraphine's gaze flicked to Rowan. A faint tightening at her mouth. Jealousy? Irritation? Something older and uglier than either? Then Seraphine raised her voice, carrying across the frozen hall. Lady Isolde, she said almost pleasantly, you have betrayed your queen. Isolde's eyes blazed, but she couldn't move. Seraphine continued, by night court law the penalty is death. A murmur rose from the immobilized nobles. Fear, anticipation, hunger for spectacle. Leora's head snapped up. No. Seraphine's eyes returned to her. You do not dictate my justice. Leora's voice shook. If you kill her now, you prove her point. You prove the court can't change. Seraphine's smile was thin. I am not interested in proving anything to traitors. Rowan's chest tightened. He saw where this was going. Seraphine would force Leora into an impossible position. Either she released the court and allowed chaos, or she tightened her grip and became the tyrant Isolde wanted to frame her as. Leora's hands trembled like they were about to break. Rowan's throat burned with the urge to shout. The bond pulsed in warning. He swallowed the pain down and made a choice with the only freedom he had left: intention. He turned slightly, speaking to Seraphine with as much obedience in his posture as he could fake. My queen, Rowan said, voice low. Let me handle Isolde. Seraphine's eyes narrowed. You? Rowan nodded once. If you execute her yourself, the court will call it fear. If I do it, they will call it duty. Rowan hated every word coming out of his mouth, but he forced them forward anyway. Seraphine watched him for a long moment, eyes unreadable. Then she murmured, "And you will do what is necessary?" Rowan's stomach twisted. Yes. The lie tasted like poison. But it bought time. Seraphine tilted her head slightly, then gave a small, regal nod. Very well. Rowan turned toward Isolde. The platinum-haired vampire's eyes were murderous. You human dog, she hissed as soon as her mouth was free enough to form words. Leora's control loosened just enough for speech now, not enough for movement. Rowan stepped close enough that only Isolde could hear him. He kept his face cold. I'm not killing you, Rowan whispered. Isolde's eyes widened a fraction. Rowan continued, voice like gravel. But you will leave this palace alive only if you swear to stop hunting her. Isolde's lips curved, bitter. You think you can bargain with me while I'm frozen? Rowan leaned closer so she could smell his breath, so the threat felt real. I can bargain with you because you're frozen. Isolde's nostrils flared. Seraphine will never let me live. Rowan's gaze flicked to Seraphine, still watching, still calculating. Then we make her think you're dead. Isolde stared, a flicker of interest breaking through rage. How? Rowan's hand slid to his belt. He drew a small vial, sleeping draught stolen from Leora's satchel days ago when he'd helped carry her supplies. He had kept it as a prayer in glass. Play your part, he whispered. Collapse when I cut you. Let them believe the blade finished you. I'll have my men drag you to the river gate. You disappear. Isolde's eyes narrowed. And why would you do this? Rowan's voice went quiet, brutal with truth. Because if Seraphine kills you in front of her, Leora will either harden or break. And if she hardens, she becomes what you wanted her to become, a tyrant with gold eyes. Isolde's mouth tightened. You love her. Rowan didn't deny it. Isolde's gaze sharpened. And what do you want in return? Rowan's jaw clenched. Nothing but her life. Isolde hesitated. Then, slowly, she nodded, almost imperceptible. Rowan straightened and raised his voice. Leora, he said gently but loud enough for the hall to hear, release her arms only. Keep her still otherwise. Leora's eyes flicked to him, frightened, questioning. He met her gaze and let his face say what his mouth couldn't. Trust me. Leora swallowed, then whispered, arms. Isolde's arms loosened. She could move them now, barely. Rowan drew his sword. The hall held its breath. He pressed the blade to Isolde's shoulder, just enough to break skin. Blood beaded, dark and glittering. Isolde hissed, dramatic. Rowan leaned in and, under the cover of the hiss, pressed the vial's contents against the cut. The liquid seeped in. Isolde's eyes widened, then glassed over as the sleeping draught took hold. Her body went slack. Rowan turned, voice cold. It is done. Seraphine's eyes narrowed slightly as if sensing something. She lives. Rowan bowed his head just enough to hide his panic. Not for long. He lifted Isolde's limp body and tossed it to the guards with deliberate roughness. Dispose of her. The guards nodded, dragging Isolde away, her platinum hair trailing like spilled moonlight. Leora stared at Rowan, trembling. Rowan, what did you? Rowan shook his head slightly, warning her not to speak. Seraphine stepped forward, gaze still sharp. Release the rest. Leora's breath hitched. She looked around at the frozen vampires, some loyal, some rebel, all caught in her net. Rowan moved closer again, voice soft. Now. Slowly. Leora closed her eyes. Breathe, Rowan whispered. She inhaled, exhaled. Then she whispered, let go. The hall exhaled with her. Bodies moved again. Swords lowered fully. Some vampires stumbled as if waking from a nightmare. Others snarled, humiliated by the loss of control. A few looked at Leora with something like worship. That look made Rowan's stomach tighten. Seraphine lifted her chin. The coup is ended. No cheers. Only murmurs. Seraphine's gaze swept the hall, locking onto each noble like a nail. Any who participated will be found. Any who encouraged it will be bled. Then Seraphine turned toward Leora. For a long moment her face was unreadable. Then she said softly, "You did well." Leora stared at her, exhausted. "I didn't do this for you." Seraphine's smile was thin. "Of course not." Seraphine moved closer, slow, careful, like approaching a skittish animal. She reached out, not to strike but to touch Leora's wrist, the same place Leora had touched her in the mirror hall. Leora flinched. Rowan's chest tightened, ready to step in. But Seraphine's touch was oddly gentle. "You held an entire court at bay," Seraphine murmured. "You are not merely human." Leora's voice trembled. "I'm still me." Seraphine's eyes gleamed. "We shall see." Then Seraphine turned to Rowan, voice calm. "My knight," she said, "you will escort her back to her rooms." Rowan's heart lurched. This was not kindness. This was control, Seraphine letting Rowan carry Leora like a prize, like proof of loyalty. Rowan bowed stiffly. "Yes, my queen." As he led Leora out of the hall, her steps unsteady, Rowan felt the palace's eyes on them. And he knew the coup had ended, but the war had just begun. Inside Seraphine, inside Leora, inside himself. Back in Leora's rooms, the door shut behind them like the lid of a coffin. The guards remained outside, but for a moment the room felt private, quiet enough to hear the tremor in Leora's breath. Leora turned on Rowan, eyes blazing despite exhaustion. "What did you do?" she demanded, voice shaking. "You said it was done." She looked at Rowan. Rowan swallowed hard. He couldn't explain fully. The bond tightened whenever he formed words that described betrayal of Seraphine's will. But he could say enough. Rowan lowered his voice. "I didn't kill her." Leora froze. "You, what?" Rowan stepped closer, careful. "I couldn't. If Seraphine executed Isolde in front of you, she'd push you into becoming what they all want, a weapon." Leora's lips parted. "So you let her live?" Rowan nodded. "If the draft holds, she'll wake outside the river gate. If she's smart, she'll disappear." Leora stared, shaking. "The bond? How can you even? Won't Seraphine know?" Rowan's throat tightened. "Maybe." Leora's face crumpled with fear. "Rowan." Rowan reached for her hands, then hesitated, remembering pain. But Leora reached first, grabbing him. The warmth of her fingers steadied him like an anchor. "I'm scared," Leora whispered, voice breaking. Rowan's chest tightened. "Me too." Leora's eyes glistened. "When I held them still, it felt like holding back a storm with my bones." Rowan swallowed hard. "I saw." Leora's voice trembled. "And when Seraphine looked at me, after, there was something in her face. Like she wanted to hate me and need you," Rowan finished softly. Leora stared. "Yes." Rowan's jaw clenched. "That's what makes her dangerous." Leora's hands tightened on his. "Rowan, if I can quiet hunger, then why does she keep treating me like a threat?" Rowan swallowed. "Because if you can end hunger, you can end her excuses." But he didn't say that. He chose something safer, truer. "Because if you can change her," Rowan whispered, "then she has to face what she chose to be." Leora's breath hitched. Rowan's voice went lower. "And because if you can control hunger, others will try to use you. Not just Seraphine." Leora nodded slowly, grim. "Like Isolde." Rowan's chest tightened. "Yes." Leora let go of his hands and paced, restless, like she carried lightning under her skin. "So what do we do?" Rowan's mind raced. He had 3 truths now. 1. Leora's power could hold vampires, quiet violence, maybe even silence hunger, briefly. 2. Seraphine wanted that silence so badly it scared her. 3. The court would tear itself apart to possess Aurelia's bloodline. Rowan said slowly, "We make Seraphine choose." Leora stopped. "Choose what?" Rowan swallowed. "Between ruling by fear and living without hunger." Leora stared. "She'll never." Rowan's voice was rough. "Then we force the choice in a way she can't ignore." Leora's brow furrowed. "How?" Rowan's throat tightened. He hated that he even thought it. "By making her hungry," he said quietly. "And then making it quiet." Leora's eyes widened, horrified. "You want to torture her?" Rowan shook his head. "No. I want to show her the truth. The difference. The cage she built for herself." Leora's voice shook. "That could make her kill me." Rowan's chest tightened. "Yes." Leora stared at him, searching his face. "Would you risk me for that?" Rowan's throat burned. "I don't want to." Leora's eyes glistened. But you might have to. Rowan swallowed hard. We are running out of options. Leora's shoulders sagged. Then she looked up, eyes fierce again. Then I'll do it, she said. Rowan froze. Leora. She cut him off, voice trembling but resolute. I won't be a pawn. I won't wait in a room while vampires decide who owns me. If I can end hunger even for moments, then I need to know how. And Seraphine needs to know what it feels like to not be ruled by it. Rowan's chest tightened with pride and dread. Leora stepped closer, voice softer. But Rowan, if this goes wrong? Rowan's voice broke. Don't. Leora's hand lifted, touching his cheek the way she always did when she saw the war in him. If it goes wrong, she whispered, you have to live. Rowan's throat tightened. I don't want to live without you. Leora's eyes filled. Then make sure I don't die. Rowan closed his eyes briefly, pressing his forehead to hers. Outside the door, footsteps approached. Rowan pulled back instantly, composure snapping into place. The door opened. Seraphine entered without apology. Her expression was calm, but her eyes burned brighter than usual. Adrenaline, hunger, anger, all hidden under silk. She looked at Rowan first, then at Leora. Are you finished conspiring? Seraphine asked softly. Leora's chin lifted. We were talking. Seraphine's smile was thin. I can smell fear. And hope. Both are equally irritating. Rowan's jaw tightened. Seraphine stepped closer to Leora, gaze sharp. You froze my court. You spared my enemy. Her eyes flicked briefly to Rowan, suspicion, and you made my throne wobble. Leora's voice was steady. Your throne wobbled because your court is hungry for change. Seraphine's eyes flashed. My court is hungry for power. Leora didn't flinch. Then let's test what I can do. Seraphine froze. Test. Leora nodded once. If you want to know whether Aurelia's blood can end hunger, stop playing games. Let me try properly. Rowan's stomach clenched. Seraphine stared at Leora for a long moment. In that silence, the whole room felt like a held breath. Finally, Seraphine spoke, voice low. Properly means risk. Leora's eyes did not waver. Yes. Seraphine's gaze flicked to Rowan. And you? Rowan swallowed hard. The bond pulsed faintly. He bowed his head. I will protect her, he said. Seraphine's smile sharpened. From me? Rowan's jaw clenched. From anyone. Seraphine's eyes gleamed. Then she nodded slow. Tonight, Seraphine said softly. In the crypts. No audience. No court. Leora nodded. Good. Seraphine stepped closer, so close Leora could feel her cold. And if you fail, Seraphine whispered, I will not hesitate. Leora's voice was quiet. I wouldn't ask you to. Rowan's chest tightened at the courage, at the willingness to die for a chance at changing monsters. Seraphine turned, cloak whispering. Prepare, she said. And Rowan, if you have lied to me about Isolde. Rowan's blood ran cold. Seraphine's voice stayed calm, almost gentle. I will make you watch Leora die slowly. Then she left. Leora and Rowan stood in the aftermath of the threat, the room suddenly too small for their fear. Rowan's voice came out hoarse. She suspects. Leora swallowed. Then we have tonight. Rowan nodded, heart pounding. One night to break a queen's hunger. One night to either free them or end them. The crypt chamber waited like a mouth beneath the palace. Blue flames burned in wall sconces, staining stone with ghost light. The basin of blood sat at the center again, dark as ink. But tonight, Seraphine had added something else. Chains? Not for Leora. For herself. Rowan's stomach tightened as he saw them, silver-threaded restraints anchored into the stone floor, etched with runes. The queen stood beside them, expression unreadable. Leora entered with Rowan, her steps steady but tense. She carried no satchel tonight, no herbs, no bandages. Only herself. Seraphine looked at Leora, then at Rowan. No weapons, Seraphine said. Rowan's jaw clenched. The bond pulsed. He obeyed, laying his sword on a stone ledge. Seraphine's eyes lingered on him as if taking inventory of what he could still do without steel. Then she turned to the chains. I will restrain myself, Seraphine said, voice flat. So that if hunger rises, I do not tear your throat out before you can scream. Leora swallowed hard. You don't have to. Yes, Seraphine cut in softly. I do. She slipped her wrists into the restraints. The silver runes flared faintly. The chains tightened with a soft metallic sigh. Rowan's breath caught. The queen of the night court, chained by her own will. Seraphine lifted her chin. Begin. Leora stood before her, trembling slightly. Her eyes were already faintly glowing gold. Rowan stepped closer, staying just behind Leora's shoulder, close enough to catch her if she collapsed. Leora swallowed. I don't know what I'm doing. Seraphine's smile was bitter. Neither did Aurelia at first. Leora's breath hitched at the name. Seraphine's gaze sharpened. Touch me. Leora flinched. What? Seraphine's voice was calm. The hunger is in the blood. In the pulse. In the place where the world tastes like a wound. If you want to quiet it, you must feel it. Rowan's chest tightened. Leora lifted her trembling hand and placed it gently against Seraphine's throat. Seraphine stiffened. Her eyes flared crimson. Rowan's breath caught. He saw the fangs lengthen slightly. Seraphine's voice came out strained. Do you feel it? Leora's eyes widened, tears forming instantly. Yes. Rowan's throat tightened. Whatever she felt, it was overwhelming. Leora's voice trembled. It's like starving. Like being on fire. Like you're drowning and the only air is someone else's blood. Seraphine's jaw clenched. Yes. Leora's hand shook against her throat. How do you live like this? Seraphine's smile was thin, almost cruel. By pretending I enjoy it. Leora's breath hitched. Rowan watched Seraphine's face, watched the mask crack just barely under Leora's touch. Leora closed her eyes. She inhaled, exhaled. Quiet, she whispered again, not as command but as prayer. The gold light in her eyes intensified, spilling through her lashes. The air thickened. Seraphine's body tensed, chains rattling as if something inside her tried to lunge free. Rowan's heart pounded. He moved closer, ready to intervene even though he had no weapon. Then, Seraphine exhaled. A long, shuddering breath that sounded almost human. Her crimson eyes dimmed slightly. Rowan's breath caught. Seraphine's lips parted, and for the first time Rowan saw something like relief soften her face. Leora's eyes snapped open, wide with shock. It's working, she whispered. Seraphine's voice was barely audible. Again. Leora nodded, trembling harder. She tightened her focus, whatever that meant, her brow furrowing, her shoulders stiffening, as if she were holding an invisible door shut against a storm. The gold brightened. Seraphine's body went still. And then something impossible happened. Seraphine began to cry. Not dramatically. Not with sobs. Just 2 slow tears sliding down her cheeks, catching blue firelight like silver. Rowan froze, throat tight. Leora's hand trembled at Seraphine's throat. You're? Seraphine's voice cracked. I can hear myself. Leora's eyes filled with tears. Without the hunger? Seraphine nodded, barely. For a heartbeat, the queen looked young. Terrified, exhausted, human in the most horrifying way. Rowan's chest ached. He realized that hunger wasn't just appetite. It was noise. It was constant screaming that drowned out conscience. If Leora quieted it, then Seraphine had to face everything she'd done with a clear mind. Seraphine's lips trembled. Aurelia. Leora's voice was soft. I'm sorry. Seraphine's eyes snapped to her and the softness vanished. Rage surged, sudden and violent, like a cornered animal realizing it has been tamed. The crimson flared back. The chains rattled violently. Seraphine snarled, fangs bared. Stop. Leora flinched, losing focus for half a second. The hunger surged. Seraphine lunged as far as the chains allowed, enough that her mouth snapped inches from Leora's throat. Rowan moved instantly, grabbing Leora and yanking her back. His heart hammered. Leora. Leora stumbled, breath ragged, eyes flashing gold in panic. Seraphine strained against chains, eyes blazing, voice guttural. You don't touch what's mine? Rowan froze. What? The word wasn't about Leora. It was about hunger. It was about control. Leora steadied herself, shaking, then stepped forward again, despite Rowan's grip. Rowan grabbed her wrist. Don't. Leora looked at him, eyes wet and fierce. If I stop now, she'll never try again. Rowan's throat tightened. She'll kill you. Leora's voice broke. Then I die trying to change something that deserves to change. Rowan stared, heartbreaking. He released her. Leora stepped forward again. Seraphine snarled, chains clinking. You think you can save me like Aurelia did? Leora's voice was shaking but firm. I'm not trying to save you. I'm trying to give you a choice. Seraphine's eyes flashed. Choice is a lie. Leora lifted her hand, not to Seraphine's throat this time, but to Seraphine's chest, over her heart. Leora whispered, voice raw, then feel it anyway. The gold light flared like sunrise. The chamber shook, subtle like stone remembering earthquakes. Seraphine's body went rigid. The hunger fought back. The queen's eyes blazed crimson, then dimmed, then blazed again, like a candle in wind. Rowan held his breath. Then, slowly, Seraphine stopped straining. Her shoulders sagged. The chains loosened slightly, no longer necessary for a moment. Seraphine's fangs retracted. Her eyes, still red but calmer, locked onto Leora's. Seraphine's voice came out barely audible. What are you doing to me? Leora's lips trembled. I'm making the hunger quiet enough that you can hear your own mind. Seraphine swallowed. It looked strange, an immortal queen swallowing like a frightened girl. Then Seraphine whispered, voice cracked, I killed her. Leora's eyes filled. I know. Seraphine's breath shuddered. I wanted to be right. I needed to be right. Leora's voice was soft. And were you? Seraphine stared at her, tears still on her cheeks. Then she whispered, no. The single word hit the chamber like a dagger dropped. Rowan's throat tightened so hard it hurt. Seraphine's hands trembled in the chains. I was wrong, she whispered again as if testing the taste. I was wrong. Leora's eyes glistened with relief and grief. Then choose something else. Seraphine's gaze flicked to Rowan, standing behind Leora, breathless. For a moment, Seraphine's expression was raw, unguarded. Then she looked back at Leora. And the queen made a decision. Release me, Seraphine said quietly. Rowan's stomach dropped. No. The bond pulsed sharply, pain flickering at his protest. Seraphine's eyes stayed on Leora. Release me, she repeated. If I am to choose differently, it must be while I am free. Leora hesitated, fear flooding her face. You could kill me? Seraphine's voice was low, trembling. Yes. Leora swallowed hard. Rowan shook his head, desperate. Leora, don't. Leora looked back at Rowan, tears slipping. If she's going to change, it has to be real. Rowan's chest broke open with terror. Leora turned back to Seraphine. She whispered, rise? Not as command. As permission. The gold dimmed. The chain's runes faded. The restraints unlocked with a soft click. Seraphine stepped forward, free. Rowan's body went rigid, ready to throw himself between them. Seraphine stared at Leora, lips parted, eyes burning. For a heartbeat it looked like she might bite. Then Seraphine lifted her hand slowly and placed it on Leora's shoulder. The touch was cold but controlled. Seraphine's voice was a whisper. Do you know how long it has been since I could choose not to feed? Leora's breath hitched. No. Seraphine swallowed. Centuries. Rowan watched, stunned, as Seraphine stepped back, creating distance, resisting instinct. Then Seraphine turned her gaze to Rowan. The bond hummed. Seraphine's voice was calm, but something in it had shifted, less like ownership, more like acknowledgement. Rowan Vale, she said. You lied to me about Isolde. Rowan's blood ran cold. He stiffened, ready for pain, for punishment, for death. Seraphine's eyes held his. And yet you did it to protect her from becoming what my court demanded. Rowan swallowed hard. Yes. Seraphine's lips curved faintly, not a smile of cruelty but of recognition. You chose mercy, Seraphine said softly. Even while chained. Rowan's throat tightened. Seraphine stepped closer to him, close enough that Rowan could smell roses and old stone. Then she did something Rowan never expected. She lifted her hand to her own throat and pulled off the night court sigil chain she wore, An older, heavier emblem than Rowan's. She pressed it into Rowan's palm. Rowan stared, stunned. What? Seraphine's voice was quiet. Your bond is severed. Rowan's chest tightened. You can't. Seraphine's gaze sharpened. I can't. I made it. Rowan's breath caught as he felt it, the humming chain inside him loosening, then snapping like a thread cut. Pain flared once, sharp and brief, then vanished. Rowan staggered, clutching the emblem. He was free. Leora gasped, tears spilling. Rowan. Rowan stared at Seraphine, shaking. Why? Seraphine's eyes glistened faintly, though she looked furious with herself for it. Because, she whispered, if I am to choose differently, I cannot begin by owning you. Rowan's throat tightened. Seraphine's gaze flicked to Leora. And because I will not keep Aurelia's blood in chains again. Leora froze. You're letting me go? Seraphine's jaw tightened. Yes. Rowan's heart pounded. Seraphine stepped back, regaining some of her queenly posture. But understand this, she said, voice steadying. The court will not accept this easily. They will hunger for you. They will hunger for what you represent. Leora swallowed. Then what do we do? Seraphine's eyes burned. We change the law. Rowan stared. Seraphine continued, voice low and iron. Not with speeches. Not with miracles. With enforcement. With consequences. With a new kind of fear. Leora flinched. So you'll still rule with fear. Seraphine's smile was thin. I will rule with restraint. She looked at Rowan again. And you will leave tonight. Before the court realizes you are unbound. Rowan's throat tightened. And you? Seraphine's gaze turned distant, heavy. I will face what I built. Leora's voice trembled. You could die. Seraphine's smile was bitter. Yes. Rowan stared at her, seeing the queen not as monster or savior, but as something else. A ruler stepping into a battlefield she created. Seraphine stepped closer to Leora one last time, gaze intense. If you ever command me again, Seraphine whispered, do it only if you are willing to become what you despise. Leora swallowed hard. I don't want to command anyone. Seraphine's voice softened. Then don't. That is how you stay human. Rowan's chest tightened. Seraphine turned away, walking toward the chamber's exit. At the doorway she paused without looking back. Rowan, she said softly. Rowan's throat tightened. Yes. Seraphine's voice was barely audible, almost lost in the blue flame's hiss. Love her, she whispered. And do not make her into a cure for your wounds. Rowan's eyes burned. Seraphine left. Rowan and Leora stood trembling in the crypt chamber, freedom and danger settling over them like cold rain. Rowan reached for Leora's hand. This time, nothing punished him. Leora gripped him fiercely, sobbing once, small, broken. We have to go, Rowan whispered. Leora nodded, wiping tears. Yes. They ran, up through the palace's veins, through corridors that suddenly seemed less like a prison and more like a labyrinth to escape. Behind them, somewhere deep in Vesperhold, a queen prepared to rewrite centuries of hunger. They didn't leave Vesperhold like heroes. They left like fugitives. Rowan led Leora through servants' corridors and storage stairwells, places that smelled of dust and wax and old linen. The palace above throbbed with aftershock, guards shouting orders, nobles whispering, the air thick with the kind of unrest that preceded either reform or massacre. At a narrow iron door near the lower kitchens, Rowan paused. The lock was already open. A single figure waited in the shadows beyond, Malrek. Rowan's hand moved instinctively, ready to fight, even unarmed. Malrek's obsidian eyes flicked to Rowan's throat, noting the absence of the bond's subtle tension, noting the change. She released you, Malrek said quietly. Rowan swallowed. Yes. Malrek's gaze shifted to Leora. Her eyes were no longer glowing, but the exhaustion in her face made her look fragile again, human again. Malrek inclined his head slightly, surprisingly respectful. You should leave, Malrek said. Rowan's jaw clenched. Are you stopping us? Malrek's lips curved faintly. If I wanted to stop you, you would already be in chains. Rowan's chest tightened. Why help? Malrek's gaze went distant. Because I served Aurelia once. Leora froze. You did. Malrek nodded, almost imperceptible. She was difficult, idealistic, infuriating. A shadow crossed his face, so brief Rowan almost missed it. And she was right about one thing, Malrek added. Hunger is not destiny. It is habit. Leora's throat tightened. Then help Seraphine. Malrek's eyes flicked to the palace above, expression unreadable. She does not accept help easily. Rowan swallowed. She's trying. Malrek's smile was thin. Yes. That is why the palace will bleed. He stepped aside, opening the way beyond the iron door. The night air rushed in cold, wet, real. Go, Malrek said. Before the court decides you are too dangerous to let live. Rowan hesitated, looking back toward the palace's dark corridors. Somewhere in that stone labyrinth, Seraphine stood alone against her own court, her own history, her own hunger. Rowan's chest ached. Leora touched his arm gently. Rowan. He looked at her, at the woman he loved, at the light that could become a weapon if the world kept demanding it. Rowan nodded. They slipped out into the night. Outside, the palace grounds stretched black and silent, gardens like graveyards, fountains like broken mouths. The sky was thick with cloud, moonlight hidden, but the world still felt brighter than the crypt. They ran to the stables. Rowan found a horse, ordinary, mortal, saddled and waiting as if someone had prepared it. Malrek again. Or Seraphine. Rowan didn't know, and it didn't matter. He helped Leora up, then mounted behind her, wrapping his arms around her to steady her. As they rode hard into the forest, the palace receded behind them, black spires fading into night. For a long time neither spoke. The wind tore at their hair, their clothes, their breath. Branches clawed at them like the forest wanted to keep them, but Rowan pushed the horse harder. Miles later, when the palace was only a memory, they slowed near a river. Black water slid past stones like a quiet confession. Rowan dismounted and helped Leora down. She stumbled slightly, exhaustion finally catching up. Rowan caught her, holding her close. Leora's voice was small. We're free. Rowan swallowed hard. He looked into her eyes, searching for the gold. There was none. Only Leora, tired, fierce, human. For now, Rowan whispered. Leora shuddered a breath. And Seraphine? Rowan's throat tightened. She let us go. Rowan's jaw clenched. We learn. Quietly. Carefully. You learn how to live with what's in you without letting it own you. Leora's breath shuddered. And if the court finds us? Rowan's voice was low, steady. Then they'll find two people who refuse to be used. Leora pulled back, looking at him with that steady gaze that had undone him from the beginning. And you, she whispered. Who are you now, without kings, without queens, without oaths? Rowan's chest tightened. He thought of being a boy in ash. A soldier in war. A traitor kneeling to a vampire queen. A lover who had failed and kept choosing anyway. Rowan smiled faintly, tired. I'm yours, he said. Not as property. As choice. Leora's lips trembled. She nodded and leaned in, kissing him, warm, human, imperfect. No bond punished him. No queen claimed him. Only the night, the river, and the fragile mercy of being alive. When they broke apart, Rowan rested his forehead against hers. Leora, he whispered, if you ever feel it, if you ever feel the urge to command, promise me something. Leora's eyes glistened. Anything. Rowan's voice broke slightly. Command me to stop you. Leora blinked, then laughed softly through tears, one small human sound in the dark. I promise, she whispered. They mounted the horse again and rode into the forest, toward the south, toward whatever life waited beyond kingdoms and courts. Behind them, Vesperhold remained, a black palace full of hunger and history. And somewhere inside it, a vampire queen stood before a throne that suddenly felt too heavy to sit on. Maybe she would die. Maybe she would change her court by force, because that was the only language it understood. Maybe one night she would step into the woods and vanish like a shadow, choosing solitude over rule. Rowan didn't know. But he carried one last image with him, Seraphine's face in that single quiet moment, when hunger fell silent and she had looked like someone who might finally be able to live with her own soul. And that was enough to keep Rowan riding forward, holding Leora's hand whenever the path allowed, believing, carefully, painfully, that even monsters could choose differently. That love could survive without illusions. That the dawn did not belong only to the sun. Leora's eyes filled. Why? Rowan thought of Seraphine's tears. Her whispered confession, I was wrong. He thought of the emblem in his palm, the severed bond. Because, Rowan said softly, she wanted to choose something else. Leora stared toward the dark trees. Do you think she can? Rowan's chest tightened. He didn't know. But he remembered the moment hunger went quiet in Seraphine's eyes, and how relief had looked like pain. She can, Rowan whispered. If she survives her court. Leora's voice trembled. And if she doesn't, they'll come for me. Rowan nodded grimly. Yes. Silence stretched. Then Leora lifted her hands, staring at them as if they belonged to a stranger. I hate it, she whispered. The power. Rowan's throat tightened. I know. Leora's eyes glistened. When I said stop, it felt good for half a heartbeat. Like being listened to for the first time in my life. Rowan's chest ached. That's the danger. Leora nodded slowly. I could become. Rowan cut her off gently, gripping her hands. You won't. Not if you keep choosing not to. Leora's breath hitched. What if someone forces me? Rowan's jaw clenched. Then we stay ahead of them. He pressed the silver charm into her palm, the one his mother had given him, the one Leora had once pressed against his heart. I'm giving this to you, he whispered. Leora's eyes widened. Rowan, no. Rowan shook his head. It was never a ward. It was a reminder. Leora's voice cracked. Of what? Rowan's throat tightened. That you're worth saving. Even from yourself. Leora's tears spilled. She clutched the charm to her chest. Rowan pulled her into his arms. They stood by the river holding each other as if warmth could keep the world's darkness from swallowing them. In the distance, far behind, something howled, wolf or vampire, Rowan couldn't tell. Leora's voice was a whisper into his shoulder. Where do we go? Rowan stared into the forest ahead. Unknown roads, unknown dangers, but also the first road that belonged to them. South, Rowan said. To places where the night court's shadow is thinner. Leora swallowed. And the hunger?
If you are listening to this what your heart died, remember, love isn't proven by how much pain and you can endure. It's proven by what you refuse to become. Rowan and Laura didn't win by conquering a queen. They won by choosing mercy when fear begged for violence. So if you are standing at your own dark doorway right now, take one breath, make one honest choice, and walk forward. Not because you're fearless, because you are still human.